Chapter 17:12. The group arrived in front of the stone and observed it curiously. There was nothing special about the stone, but it was able to seal the gate of heaven. It was really hard to imagine. Will the seal be broken if we move these stones away? Nana asked on a whim. As soon as she finished speaking, she hugged a stone with both hands. Yeah, she used all her strength, but the stone did not move at all. This stone is so heavy. Nana resentfully released her hands and said disappointedly. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. How could it be that easy to break the seal? Brute force won't work. Nana pouted disappointedly and said, So boring. Fang Sure had a difficult expression and said, For symbols, do you have a way? For symbols shook his head. I can't sense the gate of heaven at all, so naturally I don't know how to break the seal. Tang Zheng had already expected this and said with a faint smile, This seal came from Yin Xingyi's hands, so it must be related to the way of heaven. How could it be broken so easily? Let me see if I can use the way of heaven to break this seal. He still had something to say in his heart. Even the Empyrean fairy was nowhere to be found, which was enough to show how strange this array was. Brother, you can definitely do it. Hurry up and break this seal, so annoying. Nana puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. Tang Zheng closed his eyes and released the way of heaven that he had comprehended. In an instant, it was as if he was connected to the island, and every blade of grass and every tree became more lively. He was shocked to find that every blade of grass and every tree had a wave of energy. This wave of energy was one with the entire island and could not be distinguished from each other. But at a certain place on the island, the energy was the most concentrated. That wave of majestic energy was like a cloud, far from what the surrounding thin energy could compare to. This place is definitely where the gate of heaven is. I didn't think that I would need to use the way of heaven to find it. It is impossible to distinguish it with the naked eye. Whoosh! He took a step forward and stepped on the grass, rushing towards the cloud as if he was flying. The others did not know what was going on and hurriedly chased after him. When Tang Zheng stopped, he stared at the open space in front of him. With the naked eye, there was nothing but weeds on the ground. The others followed his gaze, their faces full of question marks. They did not know what attracted him so much. Here it is, Tang Zheng shouted and pushed out his palms, sending a steady stream of energy towards the cloud. There was no reaction. Like a clay ox entering the sea, the cloud was safe and sound. However, Tang Zheng's energy escaped his control and entered the cloud, becoming a part of the cloud. The energy of the cloud had become stronger. Strange, it's actually not afraid of attacks. This seal is really strange. He walked towards the cloud but stopped immediately because the cloud had shifted its position and was now 1,000 meters away. Transfer? Tang Zheng was aghast. He had a deeper understanding of the power of the seal. The gate of heaven was no longer fixed but could move at will. How did this happen? Tang Zheng asked himself if he could do it. However, Yin Xingyi had done it so easily that day. It had to be said that her comprehension of the heavenly Tao was far beyond that of Tang Zheng. I'm going to fight you. Let's see if I can break your seal and open the gate of heaven. Tang Zheng gathered his strength and chased after the cloud. He pushed out a stream of energy and silently merged with the cloud. Don't you like to eat my power? Let's see how long you can eat it. Although Tang Zheng could sense all of this with the heavenly Tao, he could not use the heavenly Tao to break the seal. The Emperor of Heaven's comprehension of the heavenly Tao was definitely higher than his, but he did not succeed. After he tried, he decided not to embarrass himself. He might as well find another way. A majestic stream of energy rushed out from his palms and merged with the cloud. The cloud trembled as if it was about to move again. Don't even think about moving. The energy in Tang Zheng's hands continuously surged out, establishing a connection between the cloud and him. It was as if there was an additional link. The cloud tried to move, but it was firmly bound by this link. Haha, you're not omnipotent. Tang Zheng laughed, all the energy in his body gushing out. He was not afraid that his power would disappear. There were no external attacks here. He only needed to deal with the seal. In the heavenly realm, A stream of energy floated up from the Tree of Life and flew into the nine heavens. Then, through Tang Jing's arms, it entered the cloud. In an instant, the cloud trembled violently and could no longer hold on. It was like a fatty who had eaten too much and was still stuffing food into his stomach. Finally, he could not hold it anymore. Boom! With a loud sound, the cloud exploded. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of stones shattering rang out. The sealing stone was completely destroyed, and the seal was removed. Tang Jing's heart trembled. It was actually the effect of the Tree of Life. If he had known earlier, he would have used the Tree of Life's energy in the heavenly realm to break the seal. Yin Qingyi was right. Other than her, it's almost impossible for others to break this seal. If it weren't for the help of the Tree of Life, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it. No wonder the Empyrean Fairy and the Emperor of Heaven failed. Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not have time to sigh as his gaze was firmly fixed in front of him. After the cloud disappeared, a majestic stone gate stood in front of him. This was the Heavenly Gate. Compared to the Heavenly Gate, they were as small as ants. The others also saw the Heavenly Gate appear out of thin air and cheered, especially the Heavenly Gate, who raised his neck as if his neck was about to break. He stared at the Heavenly Gate excitedly and curiously like an adult. This is the Heavenly Gate. Fang Shishir deliberately revisited the Heavenly Gate. When she saw the Heavenly Gate, she was reminded of the previous trip to the Heavenly Gate. Tang Zheng was the calmest. He walked step by step towards the Heavenly Gate. The four symbols took the lead and pressed their hands on the Heavenly Gate. With a creak, the Heavenly Gate slowly opened. In the past, the Heavenly Gate required the blood of the Fu clan to open, but this was not a problem for the four symbols. No matter how sturdy the Heavenly Gate was, he had a way to open it. It was a rumbling sound. The Heavenly Gate was completely opened. The group walked in with large strides. It was no different from before. Thus, they walked forward with ease. The Heavenly Gate no longer had that gloomy and cold feeling, because the yin qi in the Heavenly Gate had almost completely disappeared. A ball of heavenly fire emerged from Tang Zheng's fingertips and floated above their heads, guiding them into the depths of the Heavenly Gate. Along the way, they did not see any traces of the Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian. Everyone could not help but be shrouded in a shadow. Where on earth could they be? Since they did not break the seal, could they not be in the Heavenly Gate at all, but somewhere else? We may not find them if we continue to search like this. Fang Shishir analyzed. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and shook his head firmly. I have a premonition that they are here. Master, I will look for them. The four symbols volunteered. They placed their hands on the rock wall and executed their divine arts. After a while, the four symbols cried out in surprise. Chapter 17:13. The four symbols cried out in surprise, as if they had found something. Four symbols, what did you find? Tang Zheng asked hurriedly. Master, I found traces of a few people, but I'm not sure if it's them. There's a mysterious energy blocking me, the four symbols said suspiciously. Tang Zheng's expression froze. The sealing formation had already disappeared, so how could there still be such a situation? Then where are they? Bring me to them quickly. Master, I can only sense them, but I may not be able to save them. What? Tang Zheng was shocked. Aren't they trapped in the Heaven Gate? How can there be no way to save them? The four symbols' face was a little masculine, and he shook his head resentfully. I don't know either. This feeling isn't very strong. I'll follow this feeling and see if I can get closer to them. All right, then hurry up and move, Tang Zheng urged, his brows tightly knitted together. What was the secret behind the sealing formation set up by Yin Qingyi? It was actually so strange. The four symbols quickly rushed forward, and Tang Zheng and the other two quickly followed. They gradually came to the deepest part of the Heaven Gate, and a weak yin qi pervaded the air. After the heavenly bed was destroyed, it could no longer be compared to before. The four symbols stopped in front of the statue of Fuxi and stared at the statue with shining eyes, his expression changing slightly. What's the matter? Tang Zheng asked. The four symbols pointed at the statue of Fuxi and said, "They seem to be inside here." Inside the statue? The three of them were greatly shocked, especially Tang Zheng, who had seen the scene of the Fuxi statue imparting the heavenly book Tao intent. He understood even more clearly that this statue was extraordinary, and it was the ancestor of the Fu clan, so he could not be the slightest bit negligent. Tang Zheng stared at the statue of Fuxi in a daze, as if he was weighing the pros and cons. This statue was not big, but it could imprison 3 people. There was probably something else about this statue. "Master, do you want me to destroy it?" the 4 symbols asked. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and shook his head. "Let me check it out first." His palm pressed against the Fuxi statue, but there was no longer any mysterious power rippling out from it. Tang Zheng activated the heavenly book, and the mysterious power of the heavenly Tao entered the statue of Fuxi from his palm. Immediately, the statue of Fuxi glowed. "Master, my senses have become even stronger. They are indeed within this statue." The 4 symbols cried out in alarm. Tang Zheng was overjoyed and tried his best to activate the heavenly book. The light from a statue of Fuxi grew stronger and stronger. Tang Zheng also sensed a few familiar auras. "Fu Yao, Li Xiaodian," Tang Zheng exclaimed to himself. He finally confirmed that what the 4 symbols said was true. Even if the 4 symbols were far away, he could sense them with his own supernatural power. However, Tang Zheng had to come into contact with the statues and activate the ancient scroll of the heavenly tomes to achieve this effect. He immediately locked onto these auras. They seemed to be in another world, faintly discernible. He tried to follow this connection and save them, but found that it was not so easy. "For symbols, if we work together, do you have the confidence to save them?" Tang Zheng asked. The 4 symbols said without hesitation, "With Master here, I have the confidence." "Good, then let's activate together." There's a universe inside this statue, and there's another small space. They're sealed in that small space. We have to forcibly save them from that small space, Tang Zheng analyzed. The others suddenly understood. It seemed that the formation that Yin Qingyi laid down was actually one with the statue of Fuxi. The intruders were directly sealed in the statue. If it was not for Tang Zheng, who knew how long they would have been sealed, just thinking about it made them shudder. Yin Qingyi's methods were really powerful. The 4 symbols nodded to show that they understood. Tang Zheng activated the spatial laws at the same time. Since this involved another space, although it was not as big as the space between the sky beyond heaven and the heaven realm, the spatial laws were still connected. Whoosh! The light on Fuxi's statue became brighter and brighter. It even covered the light of the heavenly fire floating above its head. A few pairs of eyes stared at the statue. Suddenly, a circle of ripples spread out from the statue. These ripples became more and more intense, like the surface of a lake where a stone was thrown. So dazzling. Suddenly, Fang Shishir and Nana closed their eyes at the same time. The light was too dazzling, and it hurt their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, the light disappeared, and 2 people were standing in front of them. "Li Xiaodian, Master!" 2 cries of surprise sounded. Nana flew into the arms of one of them. It was the Empyrean fairy, Fu Yao. The other person was Li Xiaotian. The 2 of them were still in a daze. When they heard the cries of surprise, they seemed to wake up from a dream. Their eyes gradually lit up. The Empyrean fairy stretched out her hands and hugged Nan Nan. Nan Nan rubbed her cheeks intimately, giggling and making a fuss. Tang Zheng and the 4 symbols stopped at the same time. The 2 of them worked together and used their divine abilities to finally save the 2 of them. Tang Zheng looked at the 2 of them in surprise and said with lingering fear, "Congratulations to the 2 of you for escaping. This was really scary. If it wasn't for the 4 symbols, I wouldn't have been able to find you." Normal people revered Fuxi's statue and would not dare to use their skills to test the statue. That would be a great disrespect. Only people who were not from the Fu clan would dare to be so daring. If it wasn't for this, they definitely wouldn't have found out that there was a universe inside the statue. Li Xiaodian also saw Tang Zheng. He revealed a guilty expression and said resentfully, Tang Zheng, I'm sorry. I didn't help you. Instead, I'll let you take the risk and come to Heaven's Gate. Tang Zheng felt relieved and also became happy. He held Li Xiaoyan's hand and said, "Why say such silly things? You did to save me. You should be the one who worked hard." The corners of Li Xiaoyan's mouth curled up, and her cold face changed. Tang Zheng turned to look at the Empyrean fairy. She looked angry and said to herself, "Yin Xingyi, you dare to play tricks with us and set up such a seal. I'm not done with you." The mysterious Maiden of the Nine Heavens rarely lost her composure like this. This greatly shocked the other three. Tang Zheng was also very angry and said, "Yin Xingyi likes to play tricks. She sealed Heaven's Gate in front of our eyes, but fooled everyone. We didn't even discover the true power of the seal." He paused and asked, "Fu Yao, where's the Emperor of Heaven? Has he been reborn?" This was the Empyrean fairy's true purpose for coming here. Hearing this question, Fu Yao's attention was immediately attracted. She revealed a hesitant expression and resentfully said, "We were sealed here when we just came to Heaven's Gate. Father didn't have time to test it." Then where is the Emperor of Heaven? He remembered that the Emperor of Heaven's soul was kept in a container. He didn't know how it was now. Fu Yao took out a jade bottle and called, "Father, you can come out now." However, there was no reaction from the jade bottle. It was as if the Emperor of Heaven wasn't inside. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy's expressions changed at the same time. They stared at the bottle with shining eyes. They didn't feel the soul tremble. This meant that the Emperor of Heaven's soul was no longer inside. Then where did the Emperor of Heaven go? Chapter 17:14. The Emperor of Heaven's spirit had been temporarily residing in the porcelain bottle, and the Empyrean fairy had been carrying it with her all this time. Why was there suddenly no response? Tang Zheng said in bewilderment, "The Emperor of Heaven's spirit is not in the porcelain bottle." The Empyrean fairy was at a loss for words and said, "I remember that he was always in there. How could he have disappeared? Don't look for him. I'm here." Suddenly, the Emperor of Heaven's voice rang out, giving everyone a fright. They hurriedly turned their heads and looked in the direction of the voice's origin. The Fuxi statue. Several pairs of eyes stared fixedly at the Fuxi statue. The Emperor of Heaven's voice actually came from inside. The few of them were dumbfounded. Everyone else had already come out, so how could the Emperor of Heaven be left inside? Don't be surprised. I'm just a strand of spirit. There's no way I can compare to your physical bodies, so I didn't succeed in escaping. The Emperor of Heaven comforted them. The Empyrean fairy hurriedly rushed over and grabbed the statue's arm, saying, "Father, then how can we save you?" Everyone listened attentively and guessed that this was a big problem. "Ha! Who said I was going to get out?" The Emperor of Heaven laughed loudly. Immediately, everyone was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Tang Zheng was deep in thought. The Emperor of Heaven's words had a hidden meaning, and it probably wasn't that simple. He hurriedly asked, "Emperor of Heaven, could it be that you found something in the Fuxi statue?" The Emperor of Heaven praised, "Tang Zheng, you're really smart. I haven't even said anything, but you've already guessed a little." Empyrean fairy knew her father very well and gradually understood that things were not as simple as he thought. She asked, "Father, what is going on? We only know that this statue is a memorial to ancestor Fuxi, but we don't know the origins of this statue. Furthermore, for countless years, no one in the Fu clan dared to disrespect the ancestor statue, so naturally, we wouldn't be able to find out that there was another world within the statue." Everyone secretly nodded. If it wasn't for the four symbols' divine ability, no one would have guessed that they were completely sealed in Fuxi's statue. The Emperor of Heaven continued, "This statue was actually carved by ancestor Fuxi himself. He nourished the statue with his blood, day after day, year after year. Even now, the statue still contains ancestor Fuxi's blood. Unless you enter the statue, you won't be able to discover this." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Although no one was very clear about what Fuxi's blood meant, they could still guess a little. It was really hard to predict what kind of divine ability a statue nourished by Fuxi's blood would have. Because of the ancestor's blood, This statue has already undergone a tremendous change. It is no longer an inanimate object. The Emperor of Heaven added. Everyone was still in awe of the great power of Fushi's blood when Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He asked in surprise, "Could it be that this statue can be used as a body?" Your reaction is very fast. You're right, this can already be used as a body. The Emperor of Heaven said with certainty. Only then did the others finally react. They stared at the statue in disbelief. No one would have thought that the statue would actually become a body. This was definitely because of Fushi's blood, and it was the result of countless years. The Empyrean fairy said in surprise, "Doesn't that mean, Father, you can use the ancestor's statue as a body?" The father and daughter had always wanted to find the most suitable body for the Emperor of Heaven. Unfortunately, this matter was too difficult. After so long, they still hadn't succeeded. Now, with Fushi's statue in front of them, wasn't it the best body? The ancestor statue is used by the Fu clan to worship the ancestor. If I take it for myself, wouldn't it be disrespectful to the ancestor and let down the Fu clan? Fushi said with some apprehension. The Empyrean fairy immediately fell silent. As a member of the Fu clan, she understood her father's thoughts very well. Tang Zheng laughed and said, "Your thinking is too conservative. You don't know how to draw inferences from one case." Hearing this, everyone looked at Tang Zheng suspiciously. They didn't know what he was up to. Tang Zheng explained, "Other than the two of you, who else is in the Fu clan?" The Empyrean fairy's expression tensed up. She didn't know how to answer. "Don't keep us in suspense. The Fu clan is only left with us, father and daughter," the Emperor of Heaven replied. "Then it's settled. The Fu clan is only left with the two of you. Who else can we let down?" Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and asked. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean fairy were speechless for a moment. Tang Zheng didn't give them a chance to argue and added, "Also, who is Senior Fushi? He is the first Emperor of Heaven. His abilities must be far superior to yours, right?" "Of course," the Emperor of Heaven replied without hesitation. Tang Zheng spread his hands and said, "Then that's incredible. Senior Fushi purposely used his blood to nourish the statue. Maybe he had a deep intention. What if he predicted that there would be a use for the statue in the future? That's why he did this." These words enlightened the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up. She stared at Tang Zheng and said, "Are you serious? I think that it's very possible. Senior Fushi's every move definitely has a deep meaning. We can't rule out this possibility." Tang Zheng said. The Empyrean fairy nervously asked the Emperor of Heaven, "Father, what do you think?" The Emperor of Heaven was silent. He seemed to be digesting this news. Everyone also stared at the statue without blinking, waiting for the Emperor of Heaven's answer. After a long time, the Emperor of Heaven finally opened his mouth and said, "Tang Zheng, it's not impossible." Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "Then it's fine. What's there to be conflicted about? This isn't disrespect to Senior Fushi at all. It's just fulfilling his last wish. This is true respect to Senior Fushi." In truth, Tang Zheng wasn't speaking nonsense. This was because it really was possible. The Emperor of Heaven wasn't so easily fooled. He naturally understood this point, which was why he agreed with his father's words. The Empyrean fairy was delighted and said, "Doesn't that mean Father can use this body? I can give it a try." The Emperor of Heaven didn't hesitate any longer. It was impossible for him to find a second body that was so suitable. "Then let's start quickly," the Empyrean fairy urged. "Okay." The Emperor of Heaven immediately began to try to fuse his spirit with this special body. Tang Zheng's thoughts drifted. This was too unexpected. The sealing formation set up by Yan Qingyi actually sealed the intruder into the statue of Fushi. Didn't that mean that the statue of Fushi was also connected to the sealing formation? Indeed, the sealing formation was connected to the Gate of Heaven. The foundation of the Gate of Heaven was the statue of Fushi. This meant that the sealing formation was also connected to the statue of Fushi. When the sealing formation was activated, there was a universe within the statue of Fushi. It just so happened that it reached some kind of tacit understanding with the formation. Naturally, the intruder was sucked into the statue. Bang! Suddenly, a muffled sound came from within the statue of Fuxi, interrupting Tang Zheng's thoughts. The Empyrean fairy asked anxiously, "Father, did you succeed?" "I failed," the Emperor of Heaven replied dejectedly. There was no doubt about it. It was just that he had not found something that could suppress everything. Fuxi's blood. Fuxi's blood. Suddenly, Tang Zheng had a flash of inspiration. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck his mind. Qi Yu's blood. These four words popped up in his mind. The effect of Qi Yu's blood was self-evident. It was just that Tang Zheng had not thought of it for a while. Now, he felt that this method was more and more feasible. Thus, he immediately forced out a drop of Qi Yu's blood from Qi Yu's heart. The fresh blood gathered at his fingertip. It was bright red and had a mysterious aura. Whoosh! Tang Zheng flicked his finger, and Qi Yu's blood flew onto the statue. It quickly merged into the statue and disappeared. In the next moment, Tang Zheng clearly sensed that Qi Yu's blood had seeped into the statue and met Fuxi's blood. Qi Yu's blood flew out from his body. His senses were connected to Qi Yu's blood. Qi Yu's blood was equivalent to his eyes, allowing him to see the inside of the statue. As soon as the two streams of blood met, there was no need for Tang Zheng to guide them. They were like two enemies that could not tolerate each other. They fiercely collided and attacked each other. "What are you doing?" The Emperor of Heaven was imprisoned in the statue and knew all of this like the back of his hand. He was overwhelmed with shock. He would never have dreamed of such a scene. Tang Zheng said indifferently, "Don't dawdle. When Fuxi's blood is suppressed, take the opportunity to merge with the statue. If you miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you won't have another one in the future." The Emperor of Heaven's heart trembled. He did not dare to ask any more questions, nor did he dare to dawdle. He hurriedly made full preparations. The two streams of blood fought back and forth. One moment, the east wind suppressed the west wind, and the next moment, the west wind suppressed the east wind. However, Fuxi's blood had nourished the statue for so many years, so it had lost a lot of its power. In the end, Fuxi's blood was unable to withstand the continuous attacks of Qi Yu's blood and gradually showed signs of decline. The Emperor of Heaven acted according to the situation. He had been waiting for a heaven-sent opportunity, so he immediately took action. His soul quickly merged with his body, and there was no more rebound from Fuxi's blood. The Emperor of Heaven was overjoyed. He did not dare to lower his guard and quickly consolidated this sign. The statue and Fuxi's blood complemented each other. When the statue was merged with the Emperor of Heaven, it was equivalent to him taking it for himself. Fuxi's blood was also greatly affected, and its power was sharply reduced. Qi Yu's blood took advantage of the situation and crazily attacked Fuxi's blood. Fuxi's blood quickly retreated and tried to escape, but it was immediately surrounded by Qi Yu's blood. There was no way to escape. Qi Yu's blood came with great momentum and swallowed Fuxi's blood. The two streams of blood merged together, and their power was great. So, a bright drop of blood flew out from the statue. This was the result of the fusion of the two streams of blood. Tang Zheng stared at this drop of blood and felt a surge of energy from it. It far surpassed Qi Yu's blood. After all, this was the result of the fusion of the two streams of blood. The blood flew straight towards Tang Zheng, giving him a fright. Before he could dodge, the blood flew into his heart. Boom! The blood returned to Qi Yu's heart, but in the next second, a surge of energy exploded. It was like an atomic bomb had been thrown into a lake. His body immediately became abnormal. "A dash," he groaned. He was really hurt by this sudden change, but he still gritted his teeth and endured it. He hurriedly circulated his energy, and all kinds of divine abilities began to circulate on their own. The energy was immediately pacified, and it was no longer a great flood. Instead, it became a small stream that flowed along his 8 extraordinary meridians and turned into pure, true Qi. He could no longer control whether the Emperor of Heaven could completely merge with the statue. Therefore, he simply closed his eyes and immersed his mind completely into his body. There was more and more vital chi. It was simply rising crazily. One had to know that he was originally at the 7th stage of the Mahayana realm. The amount of vital chi stored in his body was unimaginable. However, his vital chi was still rising crazily, which was enough to show the huge energy of Fushi's blood. Chapter 17:16. The others were astonished to see Tang Zheng's transformation. Fang Shishir was concerned about Tang Zheng and wanted to ask about it, but she was stopped by the Empyrean fairy. Don't disturb him. His true chi is changing rapidly and might change. Once these words were spoken, everyone could not be clearer. They were pleasantly surprised as they stared at Tang Zheng with burning eyes. They already understood that his realm would most likely change again. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation. Of course, the Empyrean fairy's gaze never left the statue. She wondered if her father's soul had fused with the statue. Suddenly, the statue's eyes shone with a certain radiance and vitality. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up and her heart surged. She shouted excitedly, "Father, is that you?" The statue suddenly replied, "It's me." Wow. The Empyrean fairy's little heart felt like it was about to explode. She was bursting with joy as she flew towards the statue and cheered, "Father, you've succeeded. You've succeeded." At this moment, she was no longer the icy Empyrean fairy. Instead, she had become a sincere daughter. The statue lowered its head. It was no longer a lifeless statue. The statue had already fused with the Emperor of Heaven's soul. This was the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven lovingly stroked his daughter's hair and said, "Yaoer, father has finally succeeded." The Empyrean fairy cried tears of joy. This journey had been too difficult. The ups and downs were truly torturous. The Empyrean fairy nodded repeatedly and said, "Father, your daughter will never be separated from you again." The Emperor of Heaven nodded with a gratified smile. "Your father will definitely protect you well and won't let you come to any harm." The others were pleasantly surprised to see this scene. What the Heavenly Emperor was unable to accomplish, he succeeded with Tang Zheng's help. This was enough to show how powerful Tang Zheng was. The others felt honored. Nana raised her tender face and said, "Big brother is so powerful. He's even more powerful than him." He pointed his little finger at the Emperor of Heaven. Fang Shishir's heart tightened. She knew a little about the Emperor of Heaven's temper. If Nana said that to him, he would probably be angry. Unexpectedly, the Emperor of Heaven didn't get angry. He laughed involuntarily and said, "Little girl, you're right. In some aspects, this kid is indeed very powerful. He has even surpassed me." Nana was beaming with joy as she proudly raised her head and said, "Of course, he's my brother." Li Xiaotian frowned and asked, "Senior Emperor of Heaven, is Tang Zheng's change good or bad?" The Emperor of Heaven's gaze fell on Tang Zheng. His expression became somewhat complicated as he sighed with emotion. This kid's luck is really enviable. Huh? As soon as he said this, everyone understood the meaning behind his words. If even the Emperor of Heaven was envious, then Tang Zheng's change must be good. As expected, the Emperor of Heaven continued. He has absorbed the ancestors' blood. The energy contained in this blood is beyond imagination. He is currently absorbing it bit by bit. Once he has completely absorbed it, there will definitely be a shocking change. Everyone suddenly understood and were happy for Tang Zheng. Li Xiaotian's mouth also brimmed with a smile. But the Emperor of Heaven still didn't say one thing. He was very curious about the origin of the drop of blood that had swallowed Fushi's blood. What kind of blood was strong enough to swallow Fushi's blood? The Emperor of Heaven couldn't think of it, but he was sure that this was definitely not Tang Zheng's blood. With this kid's cultivation, it was impossible for him to do this. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar burst out from Tang Zheng's mouth, interrupting the Emperor of Heaven's thoughts and instantly attracting everyone's attention. A surge of energy burst out from Tang Zheng's body and rushed in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. With a series of loud sounds, rocks flew, and the walls on all sides collapsed quickly. The others hurriedly used their cultivation to resist this shockwave. Tang Jing's eyes were wide open, and there was a flash of light in them. Seeing the scene of chaos, he stretched out his hand, and an invisible force enveloped this small space. All the flying rocks quieted down and gently fell to the ground. Everything was calm. Tang Zheng smiled embarrassedly and said, "Sorry, it was too loud." He didn't expect that the energy contained in Fushi's blood would be so huge. Once he absorbed it, his cultivation soared, and he actually directly rushed from the 7th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm to the 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. It seemed that there were only 2 realms, but the gap between them was a chasm. Only those who had experienced it would know how difficult it was to cross this chasm. Fushi's blood helped Tang Zheng cross this chasm, which was something he didn't expect. The others stared at Tang Zheng without blinking, and discovered that his aura had changed quite a bit. In their hearts, they understood that his cultivation had definitely increased. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes and said, "Good boy, you actually broke through to the 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm." The Emperor of Heaven had experienced it before. Back then, he had spent a lot of time and effort to reach this step, which was countless times more difficult than Tang Zheng. Of course, the Emperor of Heaven was very clear that this was the effect of Fushi's blood. He couldn't help but feel a little envious. That was the most precious treasure of the Fushi clan, but it was obtained by Tang Zheng. However, he did not have any complaints. Tang Zheng only had this fortuitous encounter because he wanted to help him, and it was not like he was scheming. Therefore, this was completely Tang Zheng's opportunity. 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. The others cheered in surprise. This cultivation was unattainable for them, so they were all happy for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he stared at the Emperor of Heaven thoughtfully. The Emperor of Heaven had seen through his cultivation with a single sentence. Didn't this mean that the Emperor of Heaven's cultivation was higher than his? 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. This thought immediately appeared in Tang Zheng's mind, and his heart jumped. The Emperor of Heaven had this kind of cultivation after successfully returning to the sun, which was really shocking. After experiencing Tian Chanzi's rebirth, Tang Zheng was very clear that after a person was reborn, their cultivation would be greatly reduced compared to when they were alive. The Emperor of Heaven clearly didn't follow this rule. So why was this? Tang Zheng's gaze fell on the Emperor of Heaven's body. This body was no different from a real person, no longer a lifeless stone. A light flashed in Tang Zheng's mind, and he suddenly understood. Fushi's statue. This must be because of Fushi's statue. Fushi's statue had been nourished by Fushi's blood for countless years and was far stronger than an ordinary body. The Emperor of Heaven's cultivation didn't decrease at all after fusing with this body, and it might even be beneficial to him. Congratulations, Senior. Not only did the fusion succeed, but your cultivation has also reached the 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. Tang Zheng cupped his hands and sincerely congratulated. 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. The other souls were once again greatly shaken. An 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm and a 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm, which was almost the highest realm they knew, appeared in front of them. For a moment, everyone had mixed feelings and thousands of words, but they couldn't say it. The Emperor of Heaven smiled softly and said, "Kid, you have a good eye. You actually saw through my cultivation. Not simple." "Haha, same to you." Tang Zheng also smiled without batting an eyelid. Rumble. Chapter 1717. After the loud noise. "What's going on?" Everyone exclaimed in shock. Could it be that my movement just now was too big? Tang Zheng pondered. The Emperor of Heaven's expression suddenly changed and said, "This is because after I fused with the ancestor statue, the gate of heaven has lost its foundation and is about to collapse." Everyone suddenly realized that the Fushi statue had such a great effect. Tang Zheng was relieved. Fortunately, this was not caused by him. Otherwise, if he caused the Fushi clan's sacred ground to collapse, that would be a great sin. The Fushi statue was closely related to the Gate of Heaven and was the foundation of the Gate of Heaven. After the Emperor of Heaven fused with the statue, the foundation of the Gate of Heaven no longer existed, and the Gate of Heaven was naturally difficult to protect. The few of them were nimble and quickly rushed out of the Gate of Heaven. The Gate of Heaven collapsed very quickly, but their speed was even faster. After they rushed out of the Gate of Heaven, a loud bang sounded, and the huge Gate of Heaven disappeared, turning into a pile of ruins. Everyone looked at this scene in shock and were speechless for a long time. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy's expressions were the most complicated. After all, the Emperor of Heaven had been here for so many years, and the Empyrean Fairy had also gone through the most dangerous period in the Gate of Heaven. Rumble. The Gate of Heaven was still collapsing, and the ruins quickly caved in, as if there was a bottomless hole below, and the ruins had completely fallen into the hole. Suddenly, the few of them found a clue. Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven took the lead and flew to the top of the ruins. And, as expected, they saw a bottomless hole. Where does this bottomless hole lead to? This question involuntarily appeared in their minds, and they immediately looked at each other, seeing through each other's thoughts, and nodded slightly. The two of them decided to go down and investigate. The Gate of Heaven was originally very mysterious, and even the Emperor of Heaven might not know all the secrets. Now that such a bottomless hole had appeared, they naturally had to go in and investigate. The others also flew to the top of the bottomless hole and found that all the ruins had disappeared, leaving only a bottomless hole. We're going to go down and investigate. Tang Zheng said, I want to go too. I want to go too. The few of them spoke in unison. No one was willing to fall behind. Moreover, they all had a strong sense of curiosity. Tang Zheng was also worried that there would be more dangers on the island if they were left behind, so he agreed. Nana was the most excited. She almost jumped up and cheered. Adventure, adventure! It was obvious that her personality was completely different from Mu Hongyan's. Perhaps it was because she had interacted with Tang Zheng and became a cultivator that her personality had undergone a tremendous change. He was not afraid of the heavens or the earth. He only wished for the world to be in chaos. Whoosh! Before she could finish her sentence, she was like a fairy that flew into a bottomless pit. Be careful, Nana. Tang Zheng quickly chased after her. They didn't know what was in the bottomless pit. What if there was danger? He didn't dare to take the risk. The others also quickly followed, and the large group flew into the depths of the bottomless pit. Tang Zheng grabbed onto Nan Nan and kept her by his side. Nan Nan pouted her lips helplessly, but her pair of large eyes kept rolling around as she continuously looked around. Darkness gradually approached, and they couldn't see the path ahead clearly. A ball of heavenly fire appeared in front of them, illuminating the path ahead. True fire also lit up in front of the others, and it was quite different from heavenly fire. Even the Emperor of Heaven couldn't help but take a few more glances at the heavenly fire. The bottomless pit was getting deeper and deeper, and they couldn't remember how long they had been flying. We're almost at the bottom. Feng Shishir sighed. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and shook his head slightly. He had been to the Earth's core and seen the fire Qilin, and it was completely different from this bottomless pit. The Earth's core was extremely hot, and the temperature was almost enough to melt people, but this bottomless pit clearly didn't have such a feeling. Instead, it was a constant temperature. This doesn't look like it's going to the Earth's core, but more like a passage. The Emperor of Heaven was very knowledgeable, and he came to this conclusion after observing for a while. Passage? Where does it lead to? That I don't know. The Emperor of Heaven shook his head. Tang Zheng stared straight at the bottomless pit and said, whether it's a passage or something else, there will always be an end. As long as we reach the end, everything will naturally come to light. Everyone nodded, and they urged their energy to increase their speed, whooshing forward. It was as if they had passed through the entire underground, but they didn't give up. Suddenly, a ball of weak light flickered. Although it was inconspicuous, it didn't escape their eyes. They were like people who had found an oasis in the desert, and their eyes lit up. There's light, which means we're almost at the end. This discovery made everyone's spirits rise, and they once again increased their speed. As the saying goes, a mountain will run a horse to death. This weak light didn't seem to be far, but when they flew with all their might, they found that it was truly out of reach. After flying for a long time, they found that the light was gradually getting brighter, which meant that their guess was correct. There was indeed an end in front of them, but the end was still far away. The light gradually grew brighter and stronger, and even a gust of wind blew from the front. It was also very weak, but it was very clear when it blew on their skin. Pum! Suddenly, the few of them hit an invisible wall at the same time, and were all bounced back, retreating a large distance before stopping. The few of them were stunned, and looked in front of them in disbelief. There was clearly light and wind there, so how did they get bounced back? Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven both urged their energy and let their divine sense extend out to explore the unknown area. Pum! Unexpectedly, a repulsive force appeared, blocking their divine sense. There was no way they could extend their divine sense. The two of them steeled their hearts, as they weren't people who gave up easily, and they actually went against this invisible wall. The power of their divine sense wasn't weak, and after spending a bit of effort, they were able to break through the invisible wall, and after passing through, everything suddenly became clear. The two of them opened their eyes wide in surprise. The light in front of them was very bright, and a cool breeze brushed past their faces. They came to another place where birds sang, flowers bloomed, and orioles flew. A clear and crystalline lake was in front of them, and not far away, there was a large forest, as if it was a paradise. However, the two of them had used up a lot of their divine sense to penetrate the invisible wall, and there was no way to explore further areas. But this already proved that the Emperor of Heaven's guess was correct. This bottomless pit was indeed a passage to another place. But where exactly this place was, the two of them didn't know. The two of them hadn't seen this place in their memories, and it was really hard to imagine that there was such a wonderful place unknown to people in this world. They were preparing to withdraw their divine sense and think of a way to pass through the invisible wall with their physical bodies, when suddenly the sound of fighting came from afar. It was very loud and very shocking. There's someone here. They're still fighting. Chapter 17-18. The battle was extremely intense. They didn't even need to look to know that it was a battle between experts. Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven were both shocked. Just as they were about to investigate what was going on, they discovered that their divine sense was violently shaken and actually scattered. It turned out that after their divine sense passed through that invisible barrier, it was already extremely weak and couldn't hold on any longer. What's going on? The others didn't understand, but seeing the two's expressions greatly change, they hurriedly asked. Outside is another world. There are people fighting fiercely. We didn't even see who it was before our divine sense scattered, Tang Zheng replied. Everyone suddenly understood, and their curiosity was immediately piqued. Could it be another space? Tang Zheng was well versed in the laws of space. He clearly didn't feel like he had crossed into another space. He shook his head in denial. No, it's still the human world, just another place. The Emperor of Heaven's expression was grave. He couldn't hold back his curiosity and said, "Let's not dawdle. Let's investigate the situation first. It won't be too late to discuss it later." Okay. The two used their divine sense again. Their divine sense penetrated through the barrier and reached the other side. The first thing he saw was 3 figures flying back and forth, fighting until the sky was dark and the earth was dark. Raging waves had already been set off in the lake, which was extremely terrifying. Yin Xingyi, the Emperor of Heaven, recognized them at a glance. Wu Jun Shan Lanyu. Tang Zheng also recognized them. His divine sense firmly locked onto the two. He and the Emperor of Heaven never imagined that they would actually see these 3 people. The 3 people in the fierce battle were all experts, and they all felt the strange change at the same time. Unexpectedly, they all stopped attacking at the same time and looked around with a vigilant expression. What's going on? Yin Xingyi asked in a deep voice. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu also had the same question. They both felt that they were being locked onto by something. This feeling was extremely mysterious. Unless one's cultivation was profound, they wouldn't be able to sense it. Could it be that there were other people here? The two sides had stayed here for a long time. They had already lost count of how many battles they had fought. It was difficult to determine the victor, but they didn't sense anyone else. If there really was someone, then that person's cultivation would most likely be terrifying to the extreme. Even they had not discovered it. The expressions of the three of them became very vigilant, but there was not the slightest clue. Of course, they didn't know that this threat came from the smooth, wordless wall. The two divine senses came from the wordless wall, and there were still a few people blocking behind the wordless wall. Back then, Yin Qingyi had come out from the wordless wall. The wordless wall was equivalent to a door. Different paths would eventually lead to this place. Looking at the three's reaction, the Emperor of Heaven and Tang Zheng knew that the situation had become very urgent. No matter why these three people were here, there must be a great mystery behind it. Therefore, they had to pass through that invisible barrier in order to find out the answer. The two's divine senses dissipated once again. The three of them felt their bodies relax. They no longer had the feeling of being locked on. However, they were not in a hurry to attack each other. Instead, they became very cautious. In the bottomless pit, Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven looked at each other. Their eyes became incomparably firm. Tang Zheng said, "Is there any way to break through this invisible barrier? If you and I join hands, I don't believe that we can't break through." The Emperor of Heaven was very confident. This time, they not only wanted to break through the barrier with their divine senses, but also wanted to pass through with their physical bodies. Tang Zheng secretly nodded and gathered his strength. The two of them pushed forward with their palms at the same time. Their palms hit the invisible barrier, but they were not rebounded. This was because the two of them had already expected that there would be a rebound. Most of the rebound force was removed, so they were not sent flying. Heavenly Tao. The two of them looked at each other and said in unison as if they had a tacit understanding. In a flash, they had already seen the clues. Since Yin Qingyi was here, she must have used the Heavenly Tao to get here. They would naturally choose the Heavenly Tao. The two of them had a very deep understanding of the Heavenly Tao, especially the Emperor of Heaven. He had devoted almost his entire life to this. His understanding of the Heavenly Tao surpassed that of Tang Zheng. When the two of them joined hands, the power was indeed different. A shock wave was transmitted from the barrier, and circles of ripples were undulating. The others looked at this scene dumbfoundedly. They were secretly delighted. They guessed that there would definitely be a breakthrough, and they would be able to see another world soon. Everyone held their breaths and stared at the increasing number of ripples. Like the surface of a boiling lake, a crack was torn open. This crack spread rapidly. In a short while, it had already covered their eyes like a huge spider web. "It's here." Everyone understood tacitly and cried out inwardly. Boom! Sure enough, a loud noise sounded. This barrier shattered, breaking apart into pieces. Wow! Nana had already jumped up excitedly. She couldn't wait to rush over, but she was caught by the Empyrean Fairy. Tang Zheng and the Emperor of Heaven also relaxed. Looking at the shattered barrier, they knew that they had succeeded. This barrier could actually be destroyed by the Heavenly Tao. Just now, the two of them didn't think of using the Heavenly Tao. After seeing Yin Qingyi, they thought of this method. Then what was the connection between this place and the Heavenly Tao? Why did they need to use the Heavenly Tao to break the barrier? Huge question marks appeared one after another. The answer must be inside. Their eyes looked forward at the same time. Without the barrier, the light penetrating through the wordless wall became brighter, and the wind became warmer. Let's go through," the Emperor of Heaven ordered. He waved his hand and rushed forward with his head held high. The others also hurriedly followed. Without the barrier, they passed through the wordless wall without any obstruction. Their eyes suddenly opened up, and a warm wind brushed past their faces. They finally saw the blue sky and white clouds, as well as that paradise-like place. However, in the next second, The Empyrean fairy and the others were caught off guard and were shocked by the figures of the three people in front of them. How could it be them? The three people in front of them also had the same question. Never in their wildest dreams did they think that they would meet this group of people, and in this place too. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu's expressions were very complicated. They missed their son Tang Zheng, but they had no choice but to cultivate here. In the future, they would be able to solve problems for Tang Zheng. They wanted to see Tang Zheng even in their dreams, but at this moment, the real person was standing in front of them. For a moment, all kinds of feelings welled up in their hearts, and they couldn't say a word. Yin Qingyi's reaction was not simple at all. Her eyes first locked onto Tang Zheng. She had been chased by Tang Zheng before, and she had spent a lot of effort to escape. She never thought that the two of them would meet again here. The Heavenly Tao had always told her that the Heavenly Tao was dangerous, but she didn't completely understand where the danger came from. Was it Wu Junshan and Lan Yu? No. Through this period of battle and analysis, she was sure that the Heavenly Tao's so-called danger definitely didn't come from this couple. Then, it could only come from Tang Zheng. However, before Yin Qingyi could fully understand, her eyes were attracted by the Emperor of Heaven again. Her pupils contracted, and she looked at the Emperor of Heaven's face in disbelief. Chapter 17:19. Isn't this what the statue of Fuxi looks like? Yin Qingyi exclaimed in her heart. Could it be that Fuxi was resurrected? Fuxi was an ancient godlike figure. If he really was resurrected, how terrifying would his power be? Yin Qingyi could not imagine it. Even though she was arrogant and thought that no one could compare to her comprehension of the Heavenly Tao, she was not arrogant enough to think that she could surpass Fuxi. After all, Fuxi was the first person in the world to comprehend the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao that he comprehended was definitely unimaginable. The Emperor of Heaven did not know what Yin Qingyi was thinking. Seeing her staring at him, the Emperor of Heaven said in a deep voice, "Yin Qingyi, long time no see." As soon as this was said, Yin Qingyi was stunned. This voice was too familiar. How could she forget it? In the past, she and the Emperor of Heaven shared a body, which was equivalent to one body. She naturally understood the Emperor of Heaven very well. "You are the Emperor of Heaven." Yin Qingyi pointed at him and exclaimed. At the same time, she secretly rejoiced that it was not Fuxi who was resurrected. Otherwise, things would be difficult. The Emperor of Heaven nodded and said, "It is me. Are you not happy to see an old friend?" How could Yin Qingyi be happy? She said with a complicated expression, "I really have to congratulate you. You have finally been reborn. Where did you get this body of yours?" "The ancestor statue in the gate of heaven." The Emperor of Heaven did not hide it and said directly, "We didn't expect this, right? You thought of a way to seal the gate of heaven, but we still broke through your seal in the end. Now that I think about it, you tried so hard to seal the gate of heaven. You said that it was to prevent outsiders from discovering it, but in reality, it was probably because you didn't want us to enter the gate of heaven again." Yin Qingyi's eyelids twitched as her thoughts were exposed by the Emperor of Heaven. Tang Zheng had been staring at Yin Qingyi with furrowed brows. Seeing this scene, it seemed that what the Emperor of Heaven had said was true. She really did have such thoughts back then. "Yin Qingyi, you were so good at disguising yourself. We were all fooled by you." Tang Zheng sighed. The corners of Yin Qingyi's mouth curled up into a proud smile as she said, "This is all thanks to your cooperation. If it wasn't for you guys, how could I have completed my transformation?" Of course, Tang Zheng knew what her so-called transformation was. She must have comprehended the Heavenly Tao. If he had not brought her into the gate of heaven, none of this would have happened. Therefore, this was all thanks to Tang Zheng. But if one were to look deeper, this matter was actually linked. If Yin Qingyi had not predicted that they would reach the gate of heaven, Tang Zheng would not have brought her there. Perhaps all of this was the will of the heavens. No, it was the Heavenly Tao that chose her. Thinking about this, Tang Zheng felt a chill down his spine. She kept saying that she represented the Heavenly Tao and that it was the Heavenly Tao that chose her. Could it be true? Tang Zheng could not help but be confused. He and the Fu clan had both comprehended the heavenly Tao and even had the heavenly book. Why did the heavenly Tao choose her? What was the use of this? She gradually walked to the opposite side of Tang Zheng. Could it be that the heavenly Tao also wanted to become the enemy of Tang Zheng? This was what made Tang Zheng's hair stand on end. It was precisely because he had comprehended the heavenly Tao that he deeply understood the power of the heavenly Tao. If the heavenly Tao chose to stand on the opposite side of him, he could not imagine what kind of danger he would face. Tang Zheng's expression became especially serious. He asked, "What are you doing here?" Yan Qingyi was immensely proud of herself. Her gaze swept past the Emperor of Heaven, his daughter, and Tang Zheng. She said, "You have all comprehended the heavenly Tao, but the heavenly Tao did not tell you why you are here. This means that you're the reason why the heavenly Tao is in danger." The heavenly Tao is in danger? These 4 words caused everyone's eyelids to twitch. The Emperor of Heaven impatiently asked, "What do you mean by this? Speak clearly." Yan Qingyi smiled and said, "Haven't I made myself clear enough? The heavenly Tao asked me to come here to solve the threat to the heavenly Tao. So these threats are you." Nonsense. The Emperor of Heaven was flustered and exasperated. My Fu clan has been comprehending the heavenly Tao since the time of Fuxi's ancestor. How could we be the reason why the heavenly Tao is in danger? This is absolutely impossible. This is the truth. It is useless for you to argue. Do you think I will believe you just because you say that the heavenly Tao told you? You and I have shared the same body, so I understand you very well. Yan Qingyi, you think highly of yourself. Back then, you chose to comprehend the heavenly Tao instead of cultivating martial arts. That was because you were talented and intelligent. You also thought that you were extraordinary and thought that you were completely different from other ordinary people. Therefore, even if the Yin family has been a martial arts family for generations, you will never touch martial arts. You think that it is just a small trick and the bravery of ordinary people. The Emperor of Heaven said loudly. This was the first time he had heard of this point of view. It was refreshing. Yan Qingyi's expression changed slightly. It was obvious that her thoughts had been seen through. However, she immediately returned to normal and said, "It is not that I think highly of myself. It is because I originally had such talent. That is why the heavenly Tao chose me, and not you people who boast that you have comprehended the heavenly Tao for many years. You people are all going against the heavenly Tao. You will not have a good ending. You have a glib tongue. I don't want to argue with you. I let you escape last time. Let's see how you escape this time." Tang Zheng did not want to waste any more words with her and decided to capture her first. Yan Qingyi was ready to go. Her gaze wandered around the group. She was very clear about the dangerous situation she was in. Even without Fuxi, these people were enough to restrain her. Therefore, she could not stay here for long. She was a little puzzled. Since the heavenly Tao had sent her here, why did it not tell her what to do? Moreover, she was alone and weak. How could she defeat these people? The series of questions made her a little confused. However, the most important thing right now was to escape from danger. She saw Tang Zheng's figure rush over in a flash. Yan Qingyi's thoughts moved. With a rumble, a huge wave rose from the lake and blocked Tang Zheng. At the same time, she quickly retreated, preparing to escape. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu had fought with her countless times during this period of time. They had long since figured out her methods and were one step ahead of her to block her. Yan Qingyi saw the couple, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. "You still want to block me?" Wu Junshan laughed. "We fought for so long without a victor being decided. How can you leave so quickly?" Lan Yu's thoughts were more focused on her son. "Our son wants to capture you. As parents, of course we will help. Then die." Yan Qingyi waved her hand and released the power of the heavenly Tao. An earth-shattering attack arrived in front of the couple. The two of them had already prepared for it. Their swords combined, and sword light filled the sky, blocking the attack in an instant. With a rumble, Tang Zheng broke a large hole in the huge wave. In the blink of an eye, he passed through the huge wave and arrived in front of Yan Qingyi. He reached out with his hand, and a black hole appeared in front of him. A huge suction force immediately enveloped Yan Qingyi. Yan Qingyi hurriedly urged the heavenly Tao to resist with all her might. She constantly struggled, trying to break free from this suction force, especially when she saw that huge black hole, which was like the mouth of a murderer. She felt a strong sense of danger. Chapter 1720 F***CK. The Emperor of Heaven watched this scene without any help. He had already seen that Yan Qingyi was no match for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was already at the 8th stage of the Mahayana realm, and Yan Qingyi was also at the Mahayana realm. Although her exact cultivation level could not be seen, she was definitely not comparable to Tang Zheng. In particular, Tang Zheng had used the sky-swallowing technique right from the start. How could Yan Qingyi resist it? Yan Qingyi resisted with all her might, but she could not resist such a terrifying suction force. She flew toward Tang Zheng step by step. The others were very relieved to see this. Yan Qingyi thought highly of herself, and she was finally going to suffer today. Yan Qingyi was angry and annoyed. It was clearly the heavenly Tao that had ordered her to come here. Now that her life was at stake, the heavenly Tao did not appear again. What was the heavenly Tao's plan? Where did the heavenly Tao place her? Yan Qingyi was confused. She could only resist instinctively, but she was powerless as she looked at the black hole getting closer and closer. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. Of course, he would not repeat the same mistake as last time and let her escape. She had used a big move right from the start, making it impossible for her to resist or escape. Yan Qingyi flew in front of Tang Zheng, and their eyes met. Yan Qingyi's eyes were full of arrogance, and she was not convinced. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "You're not convinced, are you? Then resist. Let's see if you can escape from my sky-swallowing technique." Tang Zheng, you violated the heavenly Tao. The consequences are very serious. Yan Qingyi threatened. Tang Zheng did not mind and said, "I want to see how serious it is." He was about to stop the sky-swallowing technique and then restrain Yan Qingyi. After all, he did not want to suck her into the black hole and turn her into pure energy. She still had a lot of use to him. However, a strange scene occurred. Before the black hole could completely disappear, Yan Qingyi's speed increased greatly. She flew into the black hole and disappeared. What? Tang Zheng's eyes widened. He didn't understand what was going on. He had already weakened the power of the sky-swallowing technique, so why was she being sucked in again? It seemed like the sky-swallowing technique had gone out of control. Impossible. Such a situation had never happened before. The others also looked at Tang Zheng in surprise. After a while, they reacted and asked in a daze, "You killed her just like that?" They all knew how powerful the sky-swallowing skill was. Once they were sucked into that black hole, their lives would be lost. Tang Zheng shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I never thought of killing her like that." "Then why did you suck her into the black hole?" "This," Tang Zheng stammered. "I don't know what happened, either. I was clearly about to stop the sky-swallowing technique, but she was caught off guard and was sucked in." The Emperor of Heaven's expression became serious. From Yan Qingyi's words and actions, she was not someone who would willingly walk into a trap. Since it was not Tang Zheng who took the initiative to suck her in, there was only one possibility. Yan Qingyi flew in of her own accord. However, this did not make sense. She was clearly seeking her own death. She was not crazy, so why would she do such a thing? The Emperor of Heaven thought hard and finally agreed with his own guess, saying, "Yan Qingyi must have gone in by herself." What? This news was even more shocking. Everyone's eyes seemed like they were about to burst out of their sockets. Yan Qingyi went in by herself? How is this possible? She was not an idiot, so how could she do such a stupid thing? Even Tang Zheng did not understand this point, but seeing the Emperor of Heaven speak with such certainty, his heart sank. He knew that the Emperor of Heaven must have made an important discovery. "Senior Emperor of Heaven, did you discover something?" The Emperor of Heaven muttered, "I know what kind of person she is very well. Sometimes she is even a little paranoid and crazy. Moreover, do you remember what she said just now? She came here on the orders of the heavenly Tao, so she must have a purpose." The Emperor of Heaven paused. When the heavenly Tao was mentioned, he had mixed feelings. I have studied the heavenly Tao for so many years, and I am very sure of one thing. The heavenly Tao has its own subjective consciousness. The heavenly Tao must have a purpose for ordering Yin Xingyi like this. The heavenly Tao has its own subjective consciousness. This sentence shocked everyone. Even Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy were no exception, because they had never thought of this point. Only the Emperor of Heaven, who had been studying the heavenly Tao all his life, would have such a deep and different understanding. Senior, are you saying that the heavenly Tao wants her to enter the black hole? What request does the heavenly Tao have? Tang Zheng asked nervously. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng thoughtfully and said meaningfully, "You have to give us an answer. What is so magical about this swallowing heaven technique?" Tang Zheng was shocked. The most magical thing about the swallowing heaven technique was that it created another world, the heaven realm. Did the heavenly Tao come for the heaven realm? It couldn't be. The heaven realm was so secretive that only he knew about it. No one else knew about it. So how could the heavenly Tao know about it? However, when he thought about how the heavenly Tao was all-pervasive and mysterious, it might really know about it. Seeing that everyone was staring at him, Tang Zheng stammered and said, "This is a long story. I'll go check it out first." After saying that, his divine sense entered the heaven realm. The others didn't quite understand the meaning of this sentence, but seeing that he was deep in thought, they didn't disturb him and just looked at him quietly. Everyone guessed that Tang Zheng definitely had a secret about the swallowing heaven technique that no one knew about. Tang Zheng's divine sense had always been connected to the heaven realm. Every movement in the heaven realm would be automatically transmitted to him. However, when his divine sense entered the heaven realm, he immediately found an abnormal place. When other people were sucked into the black hole, they would instantly turn into energy and become nutrients for the heaven realm. Ever since Yin Xingyi was sucked into the black hole, the heaven realm didn't seem to have any new energy. He almost overlooked this point. What was going on? He didn't dare to let his guard down. His divine sense instantly enveloped the entire heaven realm. He almost cried out in alarm because he saw a person standing on the ground. Yin Xingyi. She was actually standing in the heaven realm unscathed and didn't turn into pure energy like the others. Only the exorcist mirror last time was like her and didn't turn into energy. Instead, it retained its original form. However, that was a magic treasure, which was different from a real person. Even his own physical body had never really entered the heaven realm. There was another strange thing. Every movement in the heaven realm would be fed back to him, but such a living person standing in the heaven realm didn't give him any feedback. This was especially abnormal. If his divine sense hadn't entered the heaven realm, he probably wouldn't have noticed this. What was going on in the heaven realm? Could it be that something was wrong? However, other than Yin Xingyi, every blade of grass, tree, and even the air was clearly fed back to his brain. It was no different from before. Tang Zheng was about to go crazy. He racked his brains, but still couldn't understand the mystery. There was no time for him to think. He had to figure out Yin Xingyi's intentions. Chapter 17:21. Fuck. When Yin Xingyi came to the heaven realm, she was also very shocked. One previously, when she was getting closer and closer to the black hole, a thought suddenly came to her mind. Enter the black hole. This thought was very strange. She immediately guessed that it was related to the heavenly Tao. At this critical moment, unless the heavenly Tao appeared, she would not be able to guess the reason. She did not hesitate because she had absolute trust in the heavenly Tao. She gave up resisting. With a whoosh, she was sucked into the black hole. Even Tang Zheng was caught off guard. When she entered the black hole, her vision turned black. A huge tearing force acted on her body. She was almost torn apart. The heavenly Tao activated and protected her, preventing her from being torn apart. Then, her eyes lit up. She found that she had come to a strange world. This world was somewhat desolate, and there was no one, except for a tree. It was because this tree was too eye-catching. Moreover, It seemed familiar. The Tree of Life. A light flashed in Yin Qingyi's heart. She finally recognized it. She never dreamed that she would see a Tree of Life in the world behind the black hole. Also, why was there another world behind the black hole? Could it be that the heavenly Tao wanted her to give up resisting to reach this world? But what should she do next? What was the use of her coming here? She could not figure it out. She landed on the ground and looked up at the towering Tree of Life. It was not as tall as the Tree of Life in the human world, but it already gave people a feeling of looking up at a tall mountain. The Tree of Life emitted a surge of life force. The surrounding plants absorbed the life force as much as they wanted and were full of vitality. Just as she was thinking hard, a shout came from the sky, like rolling thunder. Yin Qingyi, what are you doing in the heaven realm? Yin Qingyi was shocked. She quickly looked up, but did not see Tang Zheng's figure. She could not help but be shocked. She asked, Tang Zheng, where is this place? Suddenly, she remembered the two words heaven realm. She quickly asked, where is heaven realm? Tang Zheng was more shocked than Yin Qingyi, because he had never seen a living thing pass through a black hole unscathed. Heaven realm is my world. You came to heaven realm, that is throwing yourself into a trap. Your world? Yin Qingyi's eyes widened. What nonsense are you talking about? How would you have your own world? Haha, impossible? Isn't this the best proof? Yin Qingyi was speechless. Could this be the true mystery of the sky, swallowing technique? It can actually create another world. She knew very well what this meant. Tang Zheng was equivalent to the god of this world. Vaguely, she seemed to understand the so-called crisis of the heavenly Tao. It probably came from this mysterious heaven realm. However, if she wanted to find Tang Zheng, she could have gone anywhere. Why did she have to come here? What was there to pay attention to? She could not figure out. How did you enter the heaven realm and come out unscathed? Tang Zheng asked aggressively. He didn't act rashly. He wanted to figure out Yin Qingyi's motive first. Ever since he saw Yin Qingyi, everything was strange. He couldn't wait to figure out the mystery. Yin Qingyi slyly narrowed her eyes and said, Didn't you say that this is your world? Don't tell me you don't know. Tang Zheng said in a deep voice, Don't play tricks with me. This is my world. I have a final say. If you don't listen to my orders, I have 1,000 ways to make you speak. Yin Qingyi's heart trembled. She probed. Then what methods do you have? I would like to see them. Tang Zheng knew Yin Qingyi's style of doing things. If he didn't use some methods, she might not speak the truth. Thus, he said sternly, Yin Qingyi, you asked for this. Don't blame me for not considering our past relationship. Yin Qingyi was unmoved and said, Then hurry up and show me what you're capable of. She wasn't sure what she should do. The heavenly Tao didn't give any further instructions. Thus, she took one step at a time. She wanted to see what Tang Zheng would do. Whoosh! A gust of wind rose from the ground. Like a tornado, it swept towards Yin Qingyi. Yin Qingyi retreated in a panic. She hurriedly circulated her energy to resist. She pushed forward with both hands. The surging energy shattered the tornado. Immediately after, the tornado turned into chains. Before she could react, she was bound by these chains. She struggled with all her might. With a bang, the chains broke. She soared into the air. Her hands came together and opened. A surge of energy attacked the Tree of Life. She was very clear about what the Tree of Life meant to a world. The heavenly Tao didn't give her any instructions. She could only do things according to her own understanding. First, she had to destroy the Tree of Life. This would definitely affect the heaven realm. Seeing this scene, Tang Zheng was shocked and angry. He roared, Yin Qingyi, how dare you? An invisible wall suddenly appeared in front of the Tree of Life and blocked this attack. Then, Tang Zheng moved his divine sense and tried to directly imprison Yin Qingyi. After all, he was the creator of the heaven realm. With just a thought, he could completely control everything in the heaven realm. This was a tried and tested move. He simply didn't want to tangle with Yin Qingyi and use this trump card. What's going on? Suddenly, he exclaimed. This was because he couldn't imprison Yin Qingyi like he could with other things. Yin Qingyi was so slippery that he didn't know where to start. This unprecedented feeling caused his mind to be in chaos. He roared, Yin Qingyi, how did you do all this? Yin Qingyi's attack on the Tree of Life failed. She was ready to launch a second round of attacks. After hearing Tang Jing's question, she was confused. What do you mean? Tang Zheng had an idea. He gritted his teeth. This must be the heavenly Tao's doing. I understand. It's the heavenly Tao that let you enter the heaven realm. What is the heavenly Tao trying to do? Seeing that Tang Zheng saw through the mystery, Yin Qingyi's expression changed slightly and said, the heavenly Tao's intentions are not something you can guess. This is the heaven realm. No matter what the heavenly Tao's intentions are, it won't succeed. This is my world. I am a master. That's not necessarily true. Yin Qingyi disagreed and launched a second round of attacks. Although Tang Zheng couldn't directly control Yin Qingyi, his control over the other parts of the heaven realm was still not reduced. She couldn't hurt the Tree of Life at all. She could only waste her energy in vain. Yin Qingyi's power was getting weaker and weaker. Her attacks also gradually became smaller. Tang Zheng discovered this and was overjoyed. Although he couldn't directly control her, as long as he waited until her power was exhausted, then he would have a way to control her and force her to speak. Yin Qingyi's heart gradually sank to the bottom. She knew that she would soon be completely defeated. Did the heavenly Tao want her to fail? She couldn't guess, but she believed that the heavenly Tao would not abandon her. There must be a way. Chapter 17:22. Yin Qingyi had used up all of her energy. She was like an arrow at the end of its flight, and her eyes had become dim. Seeing that he was about to control her, Tang Zheng was secretly delighted. Suddenly, a consciousness came out from the depths of Yin Qingyi's brain. Yin Qingyi's consciousness actually became fuzzy, and her eyes became sluggish. Tang Zheng discovered the change in Yin Qingyi, and his heart trembled. He had never seen Yin Qingyi like this before. Before he could figure it out, a light burst out from Yin Qingyi's eyes. She was once again filled with vitality. This was too mysterious. An extremely strong energy burst out from her body. This energy was much stronger than before, and it even shocked Tang Zheng. His attack was shattered by this energy. How could this be? Tang Zheng did not expect this. Yin Qingyi was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight. So why did she suddenly erupt? Yin Qingyi, how did you do it? Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. I'm not Yin Qingyi. Yin Qingyi opened her mouth. Although her voice was still hers, her tone had completely changed. It was as if she was a completely different person. Tang Zheng heard the difference and was shocked. How did Yin Qingyi become like this? It was as if she was a completely different person. I am a heavenly Tao. Yin Qingyi opened her mouth again. Tang Zheng was so scared that he almost jumped out. He exclaimed, What did you say? Very surprised, right? After all, you also comprehended a part of the heavenly Tao. Yin Qingyi said. Tang Zheng was of course shocked. For a moment, he did not know how to answer. It's a pity that you comprehended the heavenly Tao that Fuxi passed down to you and not the real heavenly Tao. Yin Qingyi snorted as if she was very disdainful. The heavenly Tao is the heavenly Tao. Is there any difference? Tang Zheng finally recovered and asked in confusion. Of course there's a difference. Fuxi is a traitor. He didn't follow my orders and even changed the heavenly Tao himself. Therefore, what you all comprehend is a fake Tao. Fake Tao. Tang Zheng was greatly shaken. He couldn't help but believe that it wasn't Yin Qingyi who was speaking, but someone else. Perhaps it really was the so-called heavenly Tao. After all, the matter of Fuxi was too distant. Other than the person involved or the heavenly Tao, no one else knew about it. Even the Emperor of Heaven might not know. Back then, I taught Fuxi the heavenly Tao, but who would have thought that he would betray me halfway through? He actually used a great divine ability to deceive the heavenly secrets and passed it down from generation to generation, thinking of ways to deceive the heavenly secrets. The real heavenly Tao didn't appear, and Fuxi's fake Tao prevailed. It's really ironic. Yin Qingyi said angrily. Tang Zheng's heart was already in a perilous situation. The amount of information contained in the other party's words was too much. His brain actually couldn't wrap itself around it, because this completely overturned his understanding. Fortunately, Yin Qingyi appeared. I taught her the real heavenly Tao and crippled Fushi's fake Tao. Seeing that the plan was going smoothly and Fushi's descendants were declining day by day, Fushi's fake Tao was no longer obvious. I never thought that another great Tao would appear in this world and threaten the heavenly Tao. After Yin Qingyi finished speaking, she looked around with a deep gaze and said, "Today, I finally saw this great Tao that appeared out of nowhere." Tang Zheng's heart moved. He seemed to have realized what the other party was talking about. Could it be the great Tao of the heaven realm? Was there a great Tao in the heaven realm? Tang Zheng didn't know, because, as the creator of the heaven realm, he didn't know. What is the great Tao that appeared out of nowhere that you spoke of? Tang Zheng asked curiously. The Tao of the heaven realm that you speak of, does the heaven realm have its own Tao? Tang Zheng was flabbergasted. Of course it does. Every world has its own Tao, and the heaven realm is no exception. It's just that the heaven realm isn't perfect yet, and the great Tao isn't obvious. That's why you, the creator, didn't notice it. But why would the heaven realm's Tao threaten your existence? Tang Zheng asked puzzledly. Yin Qingyi snorted and said, "When another world appears in one world, the Tao of the two worlds will definitely fight and determine the winner. Your heaven realm appeared in the human world. The Tao of the heaven realm and the Tao of the human world will naturally fight against each other. In the end, only one of them will remain. Could it be that we can't tolerate each other?" Tang Zheng suddenly asked. Yin Qingyi laughed wildly. "Tolerate each other? Huh? Do you think this is playing house? There can only be one great Tao in this world, and it can only be my Tao of the heavens." Tang Zheng curled his lips and disagreed. "Fortunately, I discovered your Tao of the heaven realm first, and killed it when it just sprouted. Then, there's nothing that can threaten me," Yin Qingyi said proudly. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the Tao of the heavens had this idea. But why did the Tao of the heavens choose this place to act? After all, the heaven realm had appeared for a long time. Why didn't the Tao of the heavens make a move before? When Tang Zheng raised this question, Yin Qingyi said nonstop, "How could it be so easy to make a move in other places? Do you know where this place is? Where's this place? The birthplace of this world. The human world originated from here. Whether it's me, the Tao of the heaven realm, or your Tao of the heaven realm, it will be very weak here. That's why I can more smoothly kill your Tao of the heaven realm." Yin Qingyi said, "What? The birthplace of the world?" Tang Zheng had never heard of such a statement and was stunned again. Every word that Yin Qingyi said could be said to be shocking. Although Tang Zheng could not completely understand the mystery, he understood one thing. This place was extraordinary and could affect the so-called Great Tao. The Tao of the heavens used this point to smoothly kill the Tao of the heaven realm. Another thing proved this point. Previously, Tang Zheng could not sense the existence of Yin Qingyi, which meant that the operation of the heaven realm was not as smooth as before. This must be because the Tao of the heaven realm was affected by the suppression. Tang Zheng knew that he was facing the biggest crisis in history. Moreover, even if there were other experts around him, they could not help him at all. In this war, he could only rely on himself. His opponent was the illusory and incomparably powerful Tao of the heavens. Did he have a chance to win? In the past, he could always be full of confidence and turn danger into safety. Now, even though he had reached the 8th stage of the Mahayana realm, he did not have much confidence. To others, just thinking about fighting against the brilliant Tao of the heavens was enough to make them tremble in fear and retreat. Even so, Tang Zheng was not scared away. He mustered up his courage and said, "I don't know how much credibility your words have, but if you want to destroy my heaven realm, I will definitely not agree. Do you really think that with your current cultivation, you can fight against me? You really don't know the power of the Tao of the heavens. A firefly dares to compete with the sun and the moon. It's ridiculous," Yin Qingyi said disdainfully. Chapter 17:23. Yan Qingyi had transformed into the heavenly Tao. Her every move had a different style. Her face was calm as she walked towards the tree of life step by step. Obviously, she was aiming for the tree of life. The tree of life was the foundation of the heaven realm. Only by destroying the tree of life could the heavenly Tao be destroyed. The heavenly Tao's goal was very accurate. Tang Zheng's heart trembled as he shouted, "Stop!" He couldn't wait any longer and took the lead. With just a thought, the air in the heaven realm trembled. Light flashed around the tree of life out of thin air, flowing with brilliant colors, turning into a protective shield. Boom! The protective shield descended from the sky, completely enveloping the tree of life, not giving the enemy a chance to take advantage of it. Yan Qingyi's eyelids twitched. Her fingers moved gently, and the aura of heaven and earth changed. It was actually stirred up by her. Kacha! A white lightning bolt descended from the sky and landed on the protective shield. The protective shield trembled violently, but it didn't collapse. Lightning! Tang Zheng trembled. His consciousness noticed the violent fluctuations just now. The enemy was extraordinary. She could even mobilize the energy of the heaven realm for her own use. Previously, Tang Zheng thought that once the other party entered the heaven realm, she would be a turtle in a jar and would be at his mercy. He never expected that the other party's strength was so strong that it was unexpected. Even so, what waves can you stir up? Tang Zheng snorted coldly. A bolt of lightning descended from the sky. This was the lightning used by Tang Zheng. In the heaven realm, wind, fire, thunder, and lightning were all under his control. The power of this lightning was no weaker than that of the heavenly Tao. It descended from the sky and completely enveloped Yan Qingyi. But her expression didn't change at all. The lightning was about to hit her. Suddenly, her body became blurry. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared without a trace. The lightning struck the ground, creating a hole the size of a football field. It was unknown if it hit Yan Qingyi. Tang Zheng wasn't sure, but he didn't sense where Yan Qingyi was. Yan Qingyi seemed to have really disappeared from the heaven realm. Is this an illusion? No, this is definitely not an illusion. In the heaven realm, no illusion can escape my fiery eyes of gold. This must be some other mystique. Immediately, he was perturbed and at a loss for what to do. Heavenly Tao, come out! Tang Zheng let out a deafening roar. In a corner of the heaven realm, the air fluctuated slightly. Yan Qingyi's figure appeared out of thin air again. "Are you looking for me?" Yan Qingyi asked with a faint smile. Tang Zheng asked, "How did you do all this?" Yan Qingyi laughed loudly. "Don't think that you're the only master in the heaven realm. It won't be easy for you to deal with me. My goal is very simple." Yan Qingyi pointed at the tree of life as she spoke. "As long as I destroy the tree of life, the so-called Tao of the heavenly realm will be like a castle in the air. It will definitely collapse. There will only be one heavenly Tao left in this world, and that is naturally me." Yan Qingyi made up her mind. Tang Zheng shivered. His guess was right. The heavenly Tao's goal was indeed the tree of life. There was no doubt about the value of this towering tree. It was related to the rise and fall of the heaven realm. "In your dreams," Tang Zheng said fiercely. Before he finished speaking, a gust of wind swept up and engulfed Yan Qingyi. However, Yan Qingyi's figure disappeared again. "Where is she?" Tang Zheng was caught off guard. Yan Qingyi's reaction was not slow at all. This attack still missed. Whoosh whoosh. In a corner of the heaven realm, the air fluctuated slightly. Yan Qingyi appeared again. A ray of light burst out from her hand and directly attacked the tree of life. "You dare!" Tang Zheng roared. He did not have time to counterattack. Boom! A loud sound shook the heavens and the earth. Kacha! The light shield actually cracked inch by inch. The tree of life was completely exposed in front of Yan Qingyi. Tang Zheng's face turned pale. Only he knew how strong the protective measures he used were. However, even so, these protective measures were useless. He immediately counterattacked. However, a shockwave appeared from Yan Qingyi's hand first. It went straight forward and attacked the tree of life. "Be careful." Tang Jing anxiously roared. He had been unable to control the Tree of Life. Although he tried his best to cast a spell to remedy the situation, he was still half a beat too slow. Seeing that the shock wave was about to hit the Tree of Life, a soft light rose from the Tree of Life. This light was not dazzling. It was like the sun in spring, warm and gentle. However, its power was even stronger than the scorching sun in summer. Wherever the light passed, everything changed. It became incomparably calm. The roaring wind disappeared as if it had never appeared. The roaring shock wave was annihilated without a trace. The attack was no longer there. The Tree of Life's counterattack was too fast and too powerful. Yan Qingyi also seemed to be caught off guard. When she saw that her attack had been completely nullified, she was shocked. She realized the danger and wanted to retreat quickly. However, it was too late. The light completely enveloped her. Her delicate body trembled and froze in midair. Tang Zheng was stunned. The Tree of Life's counterattack was beyond his imagination. It turned out that the Tree of Life was so powerful. Let's see how you can escape. Tang Zheng felt extremely satisfied. All of his divine sense instantly locked onto Yan Qingyi, not giving her any chance to escape. The light gradually dissipated. Yan Qingyi fell from midair to the ground. Her entire body was locked onto by Tang Zheng's divine sense. It was as if there were invisible shackles on her body. She seemed to have woken up from a dream. She kept struggling and roared, "What's going on?" It turned out that even she herself did not know why the Tree of Life's counterattack was so powerful. It was not that the Heavenly Tao did not understand the Tree of Life. It was precisely because the Heavenly Tao knew enough that it targeted the Tree of Life. In her understanding, the Tree of Life should not have such a powerful counterattack ability. It could actually resist such a terrifying attack. How did the Tree of Life do it? Could it be that the Tree of Life in this heaven realm was different from the Tree of Life in the human world? She was startled by her own guess. If that was really the case, then many of the things she had originally believed in would undergo earth-shattering changes, and her seemingly perfect plan would be for naught. In fact, her guess was right. Everything in the heaven realm was very different from the human world, especially the Tree of Life. Although they were both trees of life, they were actually completely different. This Tree of Life had many unique characteristics. For example, this powerful attack ability. It was not always passive and could even counterattack. This was enough to protect herself. Although Tang Zheng did not understand all the details, he could see some clues from Yan Qingyi's reaction. The way he looked at the Tree of Life also changed. In fact, he had a deep relationship with the Tree of Life in the human world. Back then, the government's endless research on the Tree of Life had also hurt the Tree of Life. However, the Tree of Life did not counterattack. Therefore, he set up a defensive formation to protect the Tree of Life. Chapter 17:24. The light of the Tree of Life dissipated, and everything returned to normal, as if it had never happened. However, no one could ignore the power that the Tree of Life had just released. Yan Qingyi kept struggling, but it was all in vain. Tang Zheng, let go of me quickly. How dare you treat me like this? A dignified voice rushed out from her mouth. Tang Zheng sneered. Heavenly Tao, you destroyed my Tree of Life, destroyed my heaven realm, and you still want me to let you go? Do you think that's possible? Do you really dare to do anything to me? Don't forget, I am the Heavenly Tao. So what if you are the Heavenly Tao? Tang Zheng didn't think much of it, and he also thought through many details. Senior Fushi didn't carry out your intentions back then, which means that he must have found some clues. Yan Qingyi's expression suddenly changed, and she snorted coldly. He is a traitor, and you actually dare to defend a traitor. You are indeed jackals of the same tribe. I don't care how you scold me. I believe in Senior Fushi's judgment. Tang Zheng said sternly. This sentence made Yan Qingyi's expression become even more gloomy, and she shouted, I am the Heavenly Tao of the human world. If you deal with me, it will have a serious impact on the human world. Tang Zheng's heart thumped, but he was still unmoved. He said, You dare to use the human world as a wager to threaten me. This is enough to prove that Senior Fushi's decision back then was correct. You are not as high and mighty as you boast. He was so stubborn that the other party was helpless. Although the heavenly Tao was attached to Yin Qingyi, the power that it could use was limited. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easily restrained. Although he restrained the other party, Tang Zheng had no idea what to do next. This matter was too serious and involved too many things. He really couldn't think of a solution in such a short time. You will regret it, and you want to control me like this? Dream on. Yin Qingyi let out an angry roar, and then everything calmed down. What was going on? Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly checked Yin Qingyi's condition. He found that her vital signs were stable, but she seemed to have lost consciousness. Her head was drooping, and her eyes were closed. Huh? What about the heavenly Tao? Tang Zheng was puzzled. He carefully observed for a while, but Yin Qingyi did not move at all. Only then did he confirm that something must have happened. Since he couldn't figure it out, he withdrew his divine sense from the heaven realm. In any case, the other party wouldn't be able to leave the heaven realm easily. The others stared at him with burning eyes. Seeing that his eyes had finally recovered, they quickly asked, "How is it?" The scene of Yin Qingyi disappearing into the black hole shocked them, making them realize that the situation had become delicate. Tang Zheng glanced around and sighed. If I didn't say it, you wouldn't have thought of it. Empyrean Fairy couldn't wait and asked, "Don't keep us in suspense, what happened?" Tang Zheng no longer hid anything and told them the truth. This time, he even told them the truth about the heaven realm. Immediately, everyone's eyes almost popped out. Such an earth-shattering thing happened in such a short time, especially when the swallowing heaven technique actually created another world. Emperor of Heaven and Empyrean Fairy had the most complicated feelings. After all, this involved Fushi and the heavenly axiom. The Fu clan had always thought that they had obtained the inheritance of the heavenly axiom and were the inheritors of the heavenly axiom. They never thought that there would be such twisted and bizarre details, especially when the heavenly axiom accused Fushi of betraying the heavenly axiom. This simply overturned their worldview. The father and daughter looked at each other and saw the perilous waves in each other's eyes. Tang Zheng understood their feelings and guessed that they were the most shocked. He hurriedly comforted them. "Don't mind it too much. I believe that Senior Fushi's actions must have a deeper meaning. The heavenly axiom's goal is not simple. Perhaps Senior Fushi discovered this point and made such a choice." Emperor of Heaven sighed in disappointment. "So our Fu clan is not the true inheritors of the heavenly axiom." Yin Qingyi was right. Tang Zheng disagreed and said, "Although Yin Qingyi is the inheritor of the heavenly axiom she respects is not the righteous axiom. The heavenly axiom must have an ulterior motive." Yes, the heavenly axiom must have an ulterior motive, and it's not simple. Lan Yu's eyes lit up and said with certainty. Lan Yu was quick-witted and had a high IQ. Even Li Xiaotian, who had always boasted of being resourceful, was not Lan Yu's opponent. Lan Yu hit the nail on the head, causing the others to ponder and gradually come to a realization. Empyrean Fairy asked, "What is the heavenly axiom's goal?" Everyone looked at each other, and finally their gazes fell on Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng pondered for a long time and said, "We still need to continue understanding this point. Yin Qingyi is the breakthrough point. I will definitely know the answer." "Then what do we do now?" Emperor of Heaven suddenly said, "The heavenly axiom is hidden in Yin Qingyi's body. If Yin Qingyi leaves the heaven realm, we may not be able to suppress the heavenly axiom. At that time, the heavenly axiom will be powerful and we will be in trouble." In a short period of time, he adjusted his mood and chose to believe in Fushi's choice and decision. Even if he had to become enemies with the heavenly axiom, he would not hesitate. Although the heavenly axiom said that the Fu clan cultivated a fake Tao, Emperor of Heaven did not think so. They cultivated the real Tao. Tang Zheng thought for a while and asked, "You mean to imprison Yin Qingyi and the heavenly axiom?" "Yes, imprison them in the heaven realm." Emperor of Heaven nodded heavily. You sure of guts? Tang Zheng sighed and pondered for a while before nodding in agreement. This is only a temporary measure. We still have to think of a way to understand the heavenly axiom's goal. How can it be that easy? Empyrean Fairy said dejectedly. Tang Zheng also knew that it was not easy, but he did not give up. The heaven realm was his territory. As long as Yin Xingyi could not leave the heaven realm, he would find a way one day. Also, the heavenly axiom chose this place to make a move. It is thought-provoking. He said that this place is the origin of this world and has a very mysterious power that can suppress many divine abilities. Then what is so special about this place? Also, how did the two of you come here? As Tang Zheng's voice fell, several pairs of eyes fell on Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. Yin Xingyi came here under the orders of the heavenly axiom. Then what about these two? How did they find such a magical place? Looking at the pairs of eyes, how could Wu Junshan and Lan Yu not understand what they were thinking? Lan Yu nodded towards Wu Junshan. Wu Junshan slowly spoke about how he accidentally entered this place. Tang Zheng listened seriously. For some reason, he seemed to be more and more interested in their matters. Lan Yu stared at Tang Zheng without blinking and said with emotion, "Speaking of which, back then, I was pregnant with you here." Emperor of Heaven heard this, and his expression changed. He exclaimed, "What did you say? Tang Zheng was pregnant here?" Emperor of Heaven's expression was serious. When the others heard this, they looked at him at the same time. They did not know why he had such a big reaction. In fact, even Tang Zheng was confused. Chapter 17:25. The Emperor of Heaven's question caused the others to look at him in confusion. They didn't know what he meant. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at the Emperor of Heaven blankly and asked, "Is there a problem with that? Tang Zheng was conceived here, right?" The Emperor of Heaven didn't reply and instead asked another question. Lan Yu nodded and said with certainty, "Yes." The Emperor of Heaven sucked in a breath of cold air and closed his eyes as if he had sunk into some kind of emotion. Tang Zheng's head thumped. This was related to his origins. He was completely captivated. Could it be that he had some kind of connection with this place? Senior Emperor of Heaven, if you have something to say, please say it. Tang Zheng got straight to the point. The Emperor of Heaven slowly opened his eyes and stared at Tang Zheng. His gaze met with Tang Zheng's. "Tang Zheng, do you know the origins of Celestials?" The Emperor of Heaven asked without any warning. "Celestials?" Tang Zheng was stunned. He was a Celestial himself, but he didn't know where they came from. "It looks like you don't know." Seeing Tang Zheng shake his head, the Emperor of Heaven smiled and said, "Celestials have the 9-yang saint body. It has existed since ancient times, and there have been many Celestials in history. But I'm afraid that not many people know the true origins of Celestials." Tang Zheng shook his head. "I really don't know. Even when Qi Yu was a Celestial, he never mentioned the origins of Celestials. Qi Yu really is a Celestial. Furthermore, he is one of the Celestials with the greatest achievements and strength. It is normal that he doesn't know the origins of Celestials." The Emperor of Heaven smiled mysteriously. "What's normal about that?" Tang Zheng asked in bewilderment. "Qi Yu is such a powerful figure, yet you don't know the origins of Skywalkers. Could it be that you know?" Tang Zheng didn't quite believe it, and the others were also skeptical. Although the Emperor of Heaven was powerful, compared to Qi Yu, he seemed to be a little lacking. Qi Yu was as famous as the Yellow Emperor. The Emperor of Heaven didn't mind and said indifferently, "Just because I don't understand doesn't mean that others don't." The Empyrean Fairy also looked at her father curiously. She didn't know what he meant, because even as the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven and a descendant of the Fu clan, she didn't know about this. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. He asked thoughtfully, "Then who would understand?" "Ancestor Fuxi." The Emperor of Heaven said respectfully. "Him?" As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked. If other people knew about this, then maybe some people would be suspicious. But if it was Fuxi who knew about this, then no one would be suspicious. This was because Fuxi was a godlike character in the legends. His vast divine abilities were not something ordinary people could imagine or comprehend. Tang Zheng was more concerned about the details. He quickly asked, "Senior Emperor of Heaven, what is the origin of Skywalkers? Don't keep us in suspense." Everyone nodded. Obviously, they also wanted to know the answer. The Emperor of Heaven sighed and said, "Skywalkers are the people chosen by the heavens. The heavens have high hopes for them. Once they overcome the pure yang energy, they will definitely change the world. Qi was like this, Qin Shi Huang was also like this, and many other famous figures in history were also like this." Hiss! Tang Zheng's heart started to pound. He never would have thought that he was the person chosen by the heavens. Didn't he already part ways with the heavens and even become their enemy? He did not rush to ask. The Emperor of Heaven looked at him deeply. He already knew what he was thinking and said, "Why did the heavens choose you? I also don't know. But when the heavens chose you, there must have been some kind of mistake. That's why the person it chose would rebel against it. I didn't understand this mistake before, but now I do." Tang Zheng looked at him thoughtfully. He pointed at his feet and asked, "You mean this place?" The Emperor of Heaven looked at him approvingly and said, "Yes, this is the place. Your mother was pregnant with you here. Although you were chosen by the heavens, but your roots are not like this. You have other missions on your shoulders. It is not as simple as being a Skywalker." This, Tang Zheng had always thought that he was a Skywalker. Everyone else also thought so. Only now did they know that he was not as simple as a Skywalker. Just what was going on? Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other and then looked around. So it turned out that they were pregnant with Tang Zheng here, and it caused so many problems. If they hadn't conceived Tang Zheng here, he might not have become a celestial walker and Nine Yang saint body. Naturally, he wouldn't have been hunted down by the previous martial sect leader. A happy family would have fallen apart, leaving behind a lifetime of regret. All of this was because of them. Immediately, their hearts were filled with an even stronger sense of guilt and self-blame. The Emperor of Heaven did not care about everyone's strange thoughts and continued to speak. When the ancestor was comprehending the heavens, he unintentionally comprehended the true identity of a Skywalker. However, he always kept it a secret and only passed it down by word of mouth. It was only passed down to each new Emperor of Heaven. After so many years, this information had no other use and was almost forgotten. Who would have thought that it would actually be of use today, allowing him to suddenly see the light? Perhaps it was precisely because the ancestor comprehended this that he chose another path and did not follow the will of the heavens. Tang Zheng shook his head a few times. He was still confused and asked, "I still don't understand. What is the true intention of the heavens?" "I don't know. I'm afraid the ancestor did not know everything. He only knew a little bit." The Emperor of Heaven shook his head. Tang Zheng helplessly smiled bitterly. In the end, there were too many unknown things. Since you imprison the heavens in the heaven realm, you can ask the heavens about its true intentions. The Emperor of Heaven pointed out, "It's not that easy." Tang Zheng regretfully shook his head. Now that the heavens did not communicate with him, how could it be that easy to find out? Lan Yu's expression was very conflicted. She took a deep breath and resentfully asked, "This place is the origin, so what's so special about it? And from what you said, it seems that this place is the opposite of the heavens and affected my son. Why is that?" Lan Yu was smart and hit the nail on the head. The others nodded. This was an important question. The origin only exists in legends. This world was originally a piece of chaos, but it developed from the chaos and became the origin. Then it developed into mountains and lakes step by step. The Emperor of Heaven was deep in thought, but he was also a little confused. Hasn't the heavens always claimed to be the great Tao of this world? It should be of the same origin as the origin. So how could it be the opposite of the heavens? Lan Yu asked. This. The Emperor of Heaven's cheeks were red. He was speechless and did not know how to answer. He really did not know the answer. Chapter 1726. No one could answer this ultimate question, and the group fell into silence. Fang Shishir was quick-witted and cleverly changed the topic, asking Lan Yu and Wu Shan how they came to this place. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu narrated the story of how they accidentally entered this place several decades ago, causing everyone to click their tongues in wonder. Strange, this place is definitely not so easy to enter and exit freely, especially when you just said that Yin Xingyi also entered from this wordless wall, just like us, but you guys entered from a different place. This is worth thinking about. The Celestial Emperor's eyes were blazing with fire, and he discovered something unusual from the description. The others secretly nodded. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu also understood this point and said, "We also don't know how we accidentally entered this place." The Emperor of Heaven said with deep meaning, "I'm afraid that you didn't accidentally enter, but rather that this place deliberately led you here, intentionally letting you enter and then become pregnant with Tang Zheng." Everyone's hearts trembled. They couldn't rule out this possibility. "Then why did you suddenly disappear this time and come to this place?" Tang Zheng asked in confusion. When the two left without saying goodbye, he was quite surprised. Although he didn't think much of it first, he would occasionally miss them. Lan Yu hesitated and looked at Wu Junshan. Wu Junshan held Lan Yu's hand and said, "Let me say it. We didn't fulfill our responsibilities as parents back then, and after reuniting with you, we weren't able to help you, which is equivalent to not fulfilling our responsibilities. If we want to make up for these years of neglect, we can only increase our strength." Hearing this, everyone suddenly understood and felt their deep feelings for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's head rippled, but his expression didn't change. Wu Junshan glanced at him and continued, "Back then, we discovered that a set of sword techniques would appear on the wordless wall. At first, we didn't discover the profoundness of this sword technique. Later on, our cultivations grew deeper and deeper, and we gradually recalled the profoundness of this sword technique. We decided to return here and comprehend this sword technique. Once we've mastered it, we'll go out and help you to make up for our regrets back then." With that said, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu both looked at Tang Zheng with complicated gazes. Tang Zheng looked up and pretended to be calm as he looked at them and said, "That's it. That's right. We want to make up for the mistakes we made in the past. We don't want to see you face danger by yourself every time we see you, but we can't do anything about it." Lan Yu said emotionally, tears flickering in her eyes. "Sai, why do you have to do this?" Tang Zheng sighed faintly and lamented. "This is our duty and obligation," Wu Junshan said firmly. For a moment, the scene fell into silence. This involved Tang Zheng's family matters, so even the Emperor of Heaven found it inconvenient to speak. Fang Shishir looked left and right. Suddenly, she had an idea and secretly tugged at Tang Zheng's sleeve. Tang Zheng did not look at her, but he knew what she was thinking. His expression changed slightly, and his eyes wavered. He was not a heartless person. These days, he had gradually forgiven them. Now that he heard their good intentions and hard work, how could he remain indifferent? "Little Zheng, it was our mistake in the past. We want to make up for it. Please give us a chance," Lan Yu said emotionally. Wu Junshan also nodded and said, "As your father, I was unable to protect you. This is my dereliction of duty. No matter if you resent me or hate me, this is what I should do. I only hope that you can forgive your mother. That year, she fought so much for you." Tears already flowed down from the corners of Lan Yu's eyes. "Don't say any more." Tang Zheng waved his hand. "The past is like smoke. Let go with the wind. Don't mention it again." After a slight pause, Tang Zheng said, "As for your mistakes," Wu Junshan and Lan Yu became nervous. They seemed to realize that this was the most crucial moment. Whether or not the relationship between the two sides could be eased would depend on this. In life, who doesn't make mistakes? You have already done enough. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu trembled with excitement. They had already understood Tang Zheng's unspoken words. Did this mean that he forgave them? Only. The two were at a loss for what to do in the face of this sudden happiness. They doubtfully asked, "You forgave us?" Tang Zheng heavily nodded his head. "We have always been a family." Wu Junshan and Lan Yu finally understood the essence of this sentence. They were so excited that they could not even say a word. Lan Yu staggered towards Tang Zheng and opened her arms. Tang Zheng subconsciously wanted to retreat, but he forcibly stopped himself. Lan Yu tightly hugged Tang Zheng in her embrace. Her tears were like pearls falling from a broken necklace. Tang Zheng had always longed for a mother's embrace. In the end, it even became an impossible wish. But today, he was finally in his mother's embrace. For a moment, he was at a loss for what to do. Feeling the warmth and Lan Yu's emotions, his emotions also fluctuated. He gently stretched out his arms. After hesitating for a moment, he still hugged Lan Yu. Then, he increased his strength and hugged her tightly. It was as if he was afraid that she would run away. He was afraid that this was all a dream. "My son," Lan Yu cried, tears of joy. All sorts of emotions welled up in her heart. Several decades of emotions completely erupted. Wu Junshin's eyes also reddened. He watched this scene with mixed feelings. Fang Shishir wiped the corners of her eyes. She was happy for Tang Zheng, but she was also extremely moved. She was very clear that Tang Zheng longed for a family. Now that the family was finally reunited, they had buried the hatchet and fulfilled his wish. Everyone was immersed in this atmosphere. For a long time, they were unable to let go. The sky gradually darkened. Lan Yu was reluctant to let go of Tang Zheng's hand. It was as if she was afraid that if she let go, he would fly away. They were not in a hurry to leave. After all, this was the origin. Normally, it was extremely difficult to enter. Of course, they had to investigate before leaving. Tang Zheng and his family chatted through the night. No one was willing to leave. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy took advantage of the darkness to investigate the origin. The origin was not big, but it was surrounded by high mountains. They wanted to fly out, but they found that they could not fly high. However, they were not surprised. If they could really fly freely, then wouldn't anyone be able to find this place? The Emperor of Heaven was meticulous. He did not miss a single detail. He and the Empyrean Fairy searched until dawn. They had searched all the corners of the high mountains, but they did not find anything. In the end, the two arrived in front of the wordless wall. The lake had already calmed down. Under the moonlight, the wordless wall no longer had any traces of sore practice. The sparkling water reflected the moonlight and projected it onto the wordless wall. The wall was bright as snow. The father and daughter stared at the wordless wall. Looking from the outside, it was extremely difficult to imagine that there was another passage behind the wordless wall. The two coincidentally thought of Yin Qingyi. Chapter 17:27. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy stared at the wordless wall. The moonlight reflected off the surface of the lake onto the wordless wall, making it look like a mirror. Everyone please search for the most complete novel. The two of them looked at the surface of the lake and the wordless wall before finally stopping at the wordless wall. There might be a problem with this wordless wall, the Empyrean Fairy thoughtfully said. The Emperor of Heaven said with certainty, "It's not just a possibility. There must be a problem." The Empyrean Fairy slightly nodded her head and asked, "Then what is the problem? Won't we know once we go in?" The Emperor of Heaven walked towards the wordless wall. Stepping on the surface of the water, the Empyrean Fairy also quickly chased after him. The two of them arrived in front of the wordless wall, and the Emperor of Heaven said, "Use the way of the heavens, and then we'll go in." Originally, he and Tang Zheng used the way of the heavens and came out from the inside. Doing the opposite, they could naturally go in from the outside. The father and daughter used the way of the heavens at the same time, and layers of ripples actually appeared on the hard wordless wall. The two of them lifted their legs and stepped out, but they hit the wordless wall. It was still as hard as iron, and they could not pass through. The two of them looked at each other and could see the clues in each other's eyes. What was going on? Why couldn't they enter the wordless wall? The two of them did the same thing and tried a few more times, but they all had the same effect. The wordless wall was indestructible, and there was no way to enter. Even the way of the heavens was ineffective. The Empyrean Fairy said with disappointment, "Father, is it because my comprehension of the way of the heavens is too low that I can't reach the power of you and Tang Zheng working together?" The Emperor of Heaven shook his head. "How could it be your problem?" He pointed at the wordless wall and said, "This is definitely a problem with the wordless wall. But we can't do anything. So what should we do? The wordless wall definitely has its secrets. Let's think of another way." The Emperor of Heaven stubbornly said. From the looks of it, it seemed that he was going to go against the wordless wall. The sky gradually brightened, and the morning glow sprinkled on the lake, sparkling and crystal clear. The red morning glow reflected on the wordless wall, and even the wordless wall turned red, completely different from last night. Tang Zheng and his parents buried the hatchet and had a long talk. They talked about all the things that they hadn't said to each other all these years. The relationship between them became even more harmonious and intimate. However, Tang Zheng had never called anyone father and mother before, so he couldn't bring himself to do so at the moment. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu didn't mind and weren't in a hurry. They were already very satisfied with the result. The three of them walked out of the wooden house and happened to see the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy floating in front of the wordless wall. The morning sun also sprinkled on them, as if they were wearing a layer of golden battle armor. Tang Zheng's heart moved as he guessed the two's intentions. Wu Junshan was also a smart person, so he immediately said, "Little Zheng, this wordless wall is very mysterious. Your mother and I learned our sword techniques from it. Moreover, you guys also came from it. If you want to unravel the secret of the origin, I'm afraid the wordless wall will be a breakthrough point." Although the two of them didn't say anything, Wu Junshan had already seen through their intentions. He was indeed worthy of being the sect leader of the martial sect. Tang Zheng slightly nodded his head and directly walked to the lakeside and asked, "You two, did you find anything?" The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy didn't move at all, as if they were made of wood. The few of them were shocked. These two were the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy. So how could there be no movement? Tang Zheng shivered. With a tap of his feet, he crossed the lake and came to the side of the two. He stared at them. Immediately, it was as if he was under a spell as he stared straight ahead, motionless. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other and saw the shock and worry in each other's eyes. Their figures flashed, and they also came to Tang Zheng's side. In an instant, the two's eyes were firmly attracted by the scene in front of them. To be exact, they were attracted by the scene on the wordless wall. Although they had lived here for so long, they had never seen such a scene on the wordless wall. The wordless wall was completely enveloped in the morning light, giving off a fiery red color. The morning light on the wordless wall changed unpredictably, turning into a scene. The content of the scene was the key to attracting the few of them. At first, this scene was a piece of chaos. Then, the clear air rose to the sky, and the turbid air sank to the ground. At first, the ground was only a small place, which was precisely the circular world in front of them. Then, it quickly grew bigger, and its territory became vast. The sky also quickly grew bigger and bigger. In the end, it became a world with no end in sight. It became the vast world that they saw now. Although this scene was very simple, it contained boundless logic, causing people to feel deep veneration. In particular, these people were not ordinary people. With a single glance, they were deeply attracted and deeply moved. Could this be the scene of the origin of the world? Tang Zheng had heard the four symbols describe the origin of the world, and it just so happened to match this scene. It was really hard for them to imagine that they would be lucky enough to see this scene. However, the following scene caused Tang Zheng to be greatly shocked. It was something that the four symbols had never described before. Two forces, one green and one yellow, flew out from the sky and the ground respectively. They clashed in the void, attacking each other back and forth. It was extremely joyous. What was going on? Everyone was stunned. They did not expect that there would be such a thing at the origin of the world. The green represented the sky, and the yellow represented the ground. Both forces were very powerful and evenly matched. This battle lasted for an unknown number of years before it gradually subsided. They returned to their positions and calmed down. These people were all smart people. Their gazes moved from the sky to the ground, and they gradually grasped some clues. Could it be that the green force represented the heavenly Tao, and the yellow force represented another force that came from the ground? This was a very bold idea, but it was not impossible. The sun rose, and the sunlight changed. The scene on the wordless wall also disappeared, but these people's hearts were filled with perilous waves that could not be calmed down for a long time. The Emperor of Heaven muttered to himself, "So this is the answer." Tang Zheng nodded heavily and said thoughtfully, "Yes, this is the answer that we want to find. This world does not only have the heavenly Tao, but also another Tao. It is the Tao of the ground, hidden in the origin of the world. This Tao is not inferior to the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao seems to have predicted that we would come to this place and come into contact with the origin of the Tao, so it took the initiative to strike first. It actually ordered Yin Xingyi to arrive first and then set up an inescapable net to deal with us. Unfortunately, the heavenly Tao did not expect that there would be a variable." Several pairs of eyes looked at Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. This so-called variable was definitely them. The heavenly Tao did not expect that they would coincidentally come to this place and stop Yin Xingyi's plan. Even if Tang Zheng and the others arrived at the origin of the world, Yin Xingyi would not be able to set up an inescapable net to deal with them. After thinking through this point, Tang Zheng looked at the two with gratitude and said sincerely, "You two always thought that you did not help me much, but this time you inadvertently helped me a great deal. If it weren't for you two, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be so relaxed right now." The origin of the plot had always been stuck, so it was written very slowly. Now, he had finally thought it through. Chapter 1728. Hearing Tang Zheng's words, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu were filled with mixed feelings. They never thought that their unintentional actions would have such a big effect. Wu Junshan bitterly said, "This is all a coincidence, a coincidence." Tang Zheng firmly shook his head. "This is not a coincidence. This is your choice, and then it led to this. In addition, this is also predestined. It was all destined." Everyone's hearts trembled as a light flashed through their minds. They realized the deep meaning behind his words. This was not destined by the heavens, but rather destined by the earth. This place was not a place that ordinary people could casually enter, but Wu Junshan and Lan Yu had entered several decades ago. Now it seemed that they had not entered by mistake, but had been chosen by this place, and then opened the door. They set their hearts on Tang Zheng. Since he was chosen by the heavens, he was a celestial and was also chosen by the yellow energy in the earth. Several decades later, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu once again came to this place of origin in order to help their son and raise their cultivation. All of this was a premeditated situation. The heavens had always said that the so-called heavens crisis was not only referring to the heavens, but also the yellow energy in this place of origin. This yellow energy could compete with the heavens, so its strength was definitely not weak. If it was combined with the heavens Tao, what kind of sparks would it produce? Tang Zheng could not guess, but he was very interested. This yellow energy is definitely a Tao. It belongs to the earth's Tao and not the heavens Tao. The Emperor of Heaven was silent for a long time before saying, "The earth's Tao." Tang Zheng muttered to himself, "This is a Tao that corresponds to the heavens Tao, so it should be the earth's Tao." The heavens Tao and the earth's Tao complemented each other, just like one yin and one yang. The Emperor of Heaven nodded in agreement. Yes, that yellow energy is the earth's Tao. It is an enemy of the heavens Tao, but it is not a match for the heavens Tao. It is limited to this place of origin, but the heavens Tao is everywhere. The heavens Tao cannot destroy the earth's Tao. In the end, it shows that the earth's Tao is strong, and even the heavens Tao is helpless. Moreover, the earth's Tao is not a sitting duck. It shows Tang Zheng, which means that the earth's Tao is going to make a desperate counterattack. The Emperor of Heaven said, "Desperate counterattack." Everyone was attracted by this word. Tang Zheng had become the battlefield of the battle between the heavenly Tao and the underground Tao. The tunnel really is smart. It purposely chose celestials to hide from the heavens and catch them off guard. The Emperor of Heaven clicked his tongue in wonder at the tunnel's plan. As the person involved, Tang Zheng found it difficult to calm down. He looked up at the sky and then looked down at the ground. "Please," he said, "your city gate is on fire, but you're implicating a fish like me." He had never thought that he would become the battlefield of the heavenly Tao. This was not what he wanted. This truth was too cruel. For a moment, Tang Zheng did not want to believe it, but he knew deep down that this was definitely the right answer. The Emperor of Heaven was full of interest. He sized up Tang Zheng from head to toe, as if he wanted to study him inside out. He said meaningfully, "I also didn't find anything special about you. You were actually chosen by the heavenly Tao and the underground tunnel at the same time. I also don't want it to be like this. Why don't you come and experience it?" Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not know if this was his luck or misfortune. The Emperor of Heaven laughed mischievously and waved his hand to refuse. "I don't want to try it." Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at Tang Zheng with concern. If they had not conceived Tang Zheng here, he would have been an ordinary person and would not have been separated from his family. Of course, he would not have been able to have his current achievements. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. Although Tang Zheng had experienced countless pain and suffering, his current achievements were something that ordinary people could only dream of. The Empyrean fairy looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated gaze. Back then, the Emperor of Heaven had said that Tang Zheng was not worthy of her. Now, he was actually chosen by both the heavenly Tao and the underground tunnel at the same time. This miraculous thing was unprecedented. Perhaps even Fushi back then could not be compared to him. How could he not be worthy of her? A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Naturally, no one knew what the Empyrean fairy was thinking. Their attention was all focused on Tang Zheng. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze and said, "Since you were chosen by both the heavenly Tao and the underground tunnel at the same time, now that you have comprehended a portion of the heavenly Tao, you will definitely be able to comprehend the underground tunnel. The underground tunnel is not inferior to the heavenly Tao." Comprehend the underground tunnel? Tang Zheng stared blankly at his feet. He had a lot of thoughts, but he did not know where to start. When Wu Junshan and Lan Yu heard this, they became excited. Their son was so powerful. How could they not be proud of him as parents? "Little Zheng, don't be anxious. Take your time." Lan Yu saw Tang Zheng frowning and thinking hard, and warned him with a pained heart. How can he be slow? The heavenly Tao is eyeing him covetously. If he doesn't comprehend the underground tunnel as soon as possible, then he will always be in a passive position. The Emperor of Heaven said. Tang Zheng secretly sighed. He knew that the Emperor of Heaven was not lying. His time was indeed tight. "Then I'll give it a try." Tang Zheng closed his eyes and held his breath. He quietly felt the so-called underground tunnel in the ground below. This movement attracted the attention of the others in the wooden house. Fang Shi, Li Xiaotian, and Nana rushed over, but they did not understand what was going on. The Empyrean fairy was afraid that they would be worried, so she explained everything that happened in a low voice. The few of them were dumbstruck as they stared at Tang Zheng in disbelief. Many pairs of eyes fell on Tang Zheng, hoping that he would comprehend the underground tunnel as soon as possible. That way, he would have a way to deal with the heavenly Tao. Although Tang Zheng imprisoned Yin Xingyi in the heaven realm, whether or not he could imprison her forever was a problem. In addition, the heavenly Tao was so powerful that it did not require too much energy to hide in Yin Xingyi's body. Was there still a heavenly Tao outside of the origin ground? You can't answer this question clearly. After this incident, the heavenly Tao would definitely see Tang Zheng as a thorn in its side. If he had no way to deal with it, then he would be completely passive. This response naturally fell on the underground tunnel. Therefore, everyone was impatient to know the answer. The air seemed to have solidified. There was not even the slightest bit of wind. The sun had already hung in the sky. Many pairs of eyes fell on Tang Zheng. He had become the undisputed focus. After an unknown period of time, Shua, Tang Zheng opened his eyes. A ray of light shot out and fell on the wordless wall and the lake. His eyes gradually dimmed, like a deflated ball. How is it? How is it? Everyone hurriedly gathered around and asked for the details. Tang Zheng was disappointed. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Nothing much. I have no way to comprehend the so-called underground tunnel. The underground tunnel is illusory, as if it doesn't exist. I can't sense it at all. Chapter 1729. Tang Zheng couldn't comprehend the Tao. This was like a piece of bad news that shocked everyone. After all, everyone had high hopes, and now they realized that everything was in vain. Impossible. The Emperor of Heaven couldn't wait to say. He couldn't believe this. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. Why is it impossible? Since the Tao chose you, then you can definitely comprehend the Tao. How can you not comprehend it? The Emperor of Heaven asked. The others thought about it and nodded in agreement. That makes sense. The heavenly axiom chose you. Now that you've comprehended a part of the heavenly axiom and you have a great fate with the heavenly book, you can definitely comprehend the Tao too. It's just that you haven't realized it yet. Tang Zheng was confused. As the person involved, he wasn't clear about the mystery. The others swore solemnly and said with certainty, believing him completely. The Emperor of Heaven thought about it and said, shockingly, it's like when you accidentally comprehended the ancient scroll of Tongtian, but didn't know that it was the general outline of the heavenly book. Maybe you've already comprehended the Tao in some way, but you don't know it. Huh? Tang Zheng was stunned and looked at the Emperor of Heaven at a loss. Was this really possible? The Emperor of Heaven stared at him and said, don't think that I'm talking nonsense. First, sort out what you've learned. Maybe you'll find something new. The Emperor of Heaven guided him patiently. Tang Zheng was shocked. The Emperor of Heaven was much more experienced than him. Maybe he wasn't talking nonsense. He calmed down and carefully sorted out the supernatural powers he had learned. The heavenly book wasn't among them. But what about the others? All kinds of sword techniques seemed to be offensive supernatural powers and couldn't be compared to the heavenly book. Since the heavenly axiom and the Tao were competing, the Tao's supernatural powers were naturally not weak. It wouldn't be a simple, offensive, supernatural power. He sorted it out step by step. Suddenly, he stopped. His eyes were filled with doubt, and then gradually brightened up. The Kitagarbha Sutra. His heart was bright, as if he finally found a clue. Among all the supernatural powers he had learned, the Kitagarbha Sutra was probably the most unique. It was not inferior to the heavenly book. However, the Kitagarbha Bodhisattva was a supernatural power comprehended by the Dizong of Goguryeo of the ghost realm, and then passed on to him. How could this be an authentic divine ability? The ghost realm was another world altogether. He really couldn't figure it out. When the others saw his reaction, they seemed to have discovered something. They opened their eyes wide and couldn't wait to ask, did you find something? Tang Zheng nodded bitterly. I did find something, but it's too unbelievable. I can't be sure at the moment. What did you find? The others were curious. Among the supernatural powers that I've cultivated, the only one that is most likely to be mentioned in the same breath as the heavenly writing is the Kitagarbha Sutra. Tang Zheng said solemnly. Kitagarbha Sutra? Some were confused, some were enlightened, and some turned pale with fright. Their reactions were completely different. Is the Kitagarbha Sutra really that powerful? The Emperor of Heaven had only heard Tang Zheng mention the Kitagarbha Sutra before. He didn't know the magical aspects of the Kitagarbha Sutra at all. Tang Zheng nodded heavily. It's indeed very powerful. It's a supernatural power comprehended by the Dizong of Goguryeo. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. Seeing that he was certain, he couldn't help but say doubtfully, if that's the case, then use the Kitagarbha Sutra and see if you can gain anything. The others looked at him expectantly. Tang Zheng took a deep breath and suppressed the rising waves in his heart. He closed his eyes again and chanted the Kitagarbha Sutra. Golden Sanskrit words flew out of his mouth and landed on his body. They gradually turned into a golden kasaya. His appearance was solemn and made people respect him. A lotus flower appeared under his feet. He seemed to have understood something. He gently lifted his foot and stepped on the lotus flower. The lotus flower carried him and slowly rose into the air. Moreover, the lotus flower grew bigger and bigger. When it flew to a height of a few meters, the lotus flower became extremely huge. Tang Zheng sat cross-legged on the lotus flower with his hands clasped together. There were faint spots of light flickering on his head, like the scar on the head of a monk. The others looked at this scene in shock. Their hearts surged, especially the Emperor of Heaven. He was still doubtful at first, but now he was 80 to 90% convinced. My God, Big Brother actually changed. Nana covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Don't disturb him," the Empyrean fairy warned. Nana shrunk her neck and quickly covered her mouth. She kept nodding her head. The golden Sanskrit words from Tang Zheng's mouth continued to fly out. Gradually, they were no longer limited to the surroundings of Tang Zheng's body. They actually flew towards the wordless wall. The wordless wall seemed to have some kind of attraction. This is interesting. Everyone's eyes lit up and they cheered in their hearts. The golden Sanskrit words flew to the wordless wall and silently merged with it. In an instant, the wordless wall turned into a golden light. Clang! Suddenly, a deafening sound rang out. It was like the sound of a bell, shaking people's hearts. After the sound of the bell, everyone's hearts reached an unprecedented tranquility. It even purified their hearts. This discovery shocked everyone. They looked at each other and didn't know why it had such a great effect. However, there was no doubt that the Ksitigarbha Sutra was like a heavenly book. It was inextricably linked to the underworld. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was the supernatural power comprehended by the Dizong of Goguryeo. How could it be related to the underworld? Everyone racked their brains but couldn't figure it out. They probably had to ask the person involved, the Dizong of Goguryeo, to know the answer. He was the first person in history to possess both the heavenly book and the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Many people didn't even dare to think about it. This miraculous scene appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was a witness to the miracle. No one knew what would happen next. They could only stare at the scene without blinking. Whoosh! A ray of golden light shot out from the wordless wall, as if it was born out of thin air. It crossed the surface of the lake and enveloped Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng bathed in the golden light. He looked even more solemn. Unknowingly, he closed his mouth. However, a sound of Sanskrit descended from the sky and echoed in everyone's ears. Everyone's hearts were like still water. They were not alarmed. Compared to everyone's mood, Tang Zheng's heart was stirred up. He originally wanted to give it a try. He didn't expect to hit the jackpot and succeed. The Ksitigarbha Sutra and the wordless wall formed a mysterious connection. Moreover, when he used the Ksitigarbha Sutra this time, the power that burst forth was clearly stronger than before. This place of origin seemed to have the effect of amplifying the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Tang Zheng suppressed the joy in his heart and kept activating the Ksitigarbha Sutra. When the golden light shot out from the wordless wall enveloped his body, he had an epiphany. Many parts of the Ksitigarbha Sutra that were difficult to understand suddenly became clear. Waves of mysterious golden power gathered in his body. This was the power of the Ksitigarbha Sutra in the past. However, there was a drastic change from before. Chapter 1730. The Ksitigarbha Sutra had some kind of mysterious connection with the tunnel. Tang Zheng was lucky enough to comprehend it. The golden energy ran through his body and slowly flowed towards the Yuanying. In the end, the Yuanying seemed to have turned into a little golden man. Whoosh! Suddenly, Tang Zheng's eyes opened wide. A golden light flew out, scaring the others. They all stared at him without blinking. Tang Zheng jumped from the lotus and landed on the ground. The petals of the lotus flew up one by one and scattered on Tang Zheng's body. They turned into golden energy and disappeared into his body. How is it? Everyone asked impatiently. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Senior Emperor of Heaven, you were right. The Ksitigarbha Sutra is indeed of the same origin as the tunnel. It's true. The others exclaimed. This discovery was too inconceivable. After all, this was the human world, and the Ksitigarbha Sutra was a divine ability that Dizong of Goguryeo comprehended in the ghost realm. Tang Zheng glanced at them and said, I know the doubts in your hearts. I'll call another person and answer them for you. Wait a minute. Emperor of Heaven suddenly interrupted him. He stared at him with bright eyes. His eyeballs seemed to be about to pop out. He exclaimed in disbelief, Your cultivation. Tang Zheng's lips curled into an unfathomable smile and said, Senior Emperor of Heaven, you seem to have seen through it. Emperor of Heaven nodded resentfully. The curiosity of the others was aroused. They stared at the two of them in shock. They looked at each other and asked, What's wrong with his cultivation? Emperor of Heaven took a deep breath. As if to suppress the shock in his heart, he said, I can't see through his cultivation either. Emperor of Heaven couldn't see through Tang Zheng's cultivation. How is this possible? One had to know that Emperor of Heaven was at the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm. He couldn't see through it. Then how high was Tang Zheng's cultivation? The questions that popped up one after another were like heavy hammers that hammered at their souls. Tang Zheng, what is your cultivation? The others hurriedly asked. 9th grade of the Mahayana realm. Tang Zheng said casually. What? 9th grade of the Mahayana realm. They never thought that Tang Zheng would break through to the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm not long after breaking through to the 8th grade of the Mahayana realm. This step was extremely difficult. Although the others had not reached this level of cultivation, they were able to understand the difficulties involved. This was not a simple leap in realm, it was a qualitative change. In particular, the Celestial Arch was a 9th stage Mahayana stage being, so he was very familiar with this. Amazing, this is too amazing. You reached the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm so easily. The Emperor of Heaven was also at the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm. He couldn't remember how long it took to go from the 8th grade of the Mahayana realm to the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm, but there was no doubt that it took a lot of energy and time. This time, he could recover to the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm after returning to the sun. That was entirely because he occupied Fushi's statue. Without the Fushi statue, Zhongyu had no confidence in his cultivation base at all. Is this the magic of the tunnel? The Emperor of Heaven muttered to himself. Naturally, he attributed all of this to the Ksitigarbha Sutra and the tunnel. Tang Zheng nodded calmly and said, Senior Emperor of Heaven is right. This is indeed the effect of the tunnel. I used the Ksitigarbha Sutra to comprehend the tunnel and master it. The heavenly Tao and the tunnel exist in my body at the same time. Then my cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. No, the tunnel and the heavenly Tao are enemies. How can you control two great Taos at the same time? The Emperor of Heaven's fiery eyes immediately found something strange. I also find it strange. These two energies are indeed very different, but they coexist peacefully in my body. My body has not become a battlefield for them to fight. Tang Zheng said slowly. Strange, strange. The Emperor of Heaven kept muttering. Who did you say you were going to call to explain? Fang Shishir remembered his words and asked curiously. You'll know in a while. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and walked straight to the wordless wall. His steps seemed to be different from before. Once he reached the 9th grade of the Mahayana realm, his movements were completely different from before. He stopped by the lake, and with a wave of his hand, an invisible force flew out from his hand. The lake boiled and split into two. A deep chasm appeared and spread directly to the wordless wall. Boom! A loud sound came from the wordless wall, and a door appeared on the wall. A cold wind blew out from the door, and the temperature between heaven and earth dropped by a few degrees. Ghost door! The others were shocked and recognized the door. Suddenly, the cold wind blew, and a figure approached from the ghost door, getting clearer and clearer. Several pairs of eyes firmly locked on the figure, and they seemed to have understood and guessed the identity of the person. Whoosh! A cold wind swept out from the ghost door, and in the next second, a figure stood outside the ghost door. On the lake, surprise and curiosity were still hanging on his face. Dizong of Goguryeo, Li Xiaotian exclaimed. This person was Dizong of Goguryeo. Dizong of Goguryeo frowned, and the shock in his heart was indescribable. He was cultivating in his palace, and suddenly, something seemed to be calling him. Others didn't feel it, but it couldn't escape his perception. In the ghost realm, he was the strongest, but this mysterious call appeared. How could he be calm? Without stopping to rest, he followed this feeling and directly arrived in front of the Gate of Ghosts. The mysterious summoning came from this Gate of Ghosts. Although he knew that the other side of the ghost door was the human world, he still braced himself and crossed the ghost door. Generally, people from the ghost realm couldn't stay in the human world normally. Dizong of Goguryeo had a profound cultivation, so he could stay for a while. He wanted to get to the bottom of this and figure out what was going on. Tang Zheng, it's you. When he clearly saw everything in front of him, he was immediately attracted by Tang Zheng, especially the faintly discernible mysterious aura coming from Tang Zheng's body. It caused his mind to tremble. Tang Zheng smiled and said, Dizong of Goguryeo, long time no see. Tang Zheng, how can it be you? Why can't it be me? Are you the one who summoned me? Dizong of Goguryeo asked in disbelief. Tang Zheng nodded. It's me. With a wave of his hand, he opened the ghost door. He didn't use the ghost token at all. He easily opened a door between the human world and the ghost realm with his own strength. Dizong of Goguryeo couldn't hide the stormy waves in his heart. He stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze and asked, Did you have an epiphany? Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva understood the Ksitigarbha Sutra too well, so he was able to see this point with a single glance. His attention was more on the Ksitigarbha Sutra than Tang Zheng's cultivation. Tang Zheng was awe-inspiring. Dizong of Goguryeo was indeed the Dizong of Goguryeo. He had sharp eyes and saw through the mystery in one sentence. Chapter 1731. Dizong of Goguryeo stared at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression, as if he wanted to completely see through him. This article was written by he was the one who comprehended the Ksitigarbha Sutra, so he could naturally see it more deeply than others. Your comprehension of the Ksitigarbha Sutra is actually not inferior to mine. Dizong of Goguryeo sighed endlessly. It was really hard to imagine how much time and effort he had spent to fully comprehend the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but Tang Zheng had actually done everything he had done in a short period of time. How did you do it? Dizong of Goguryeo asked. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously, pointed at his feet, and said, All of this is an opportunity bestowed by this place. Where's this place? Dizong of Goguryeo did not understand. Display the Ksitigarbha Sutra and see. Tang Zheng pointed. Dizong of Goguryeo frowned. Following his instructions, with a thought, a golden kasaya appeared on his body, and golden light enveloped his entire body. The others stared at him with shining eyes, not knowing if he would be able to obtain the same benefits as Tang Zheng. However, nothing else happened. Tang Zheng's brows furrowed. After a long while, Dizong of Goguryeo stopped and asked blankly, Nothing. How could this be? Tang Zheng exclaimed. He hurriedly displayed the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and the sound of Sanskrit immediately rang out in the air. Every blade of grass and every tree emitted a different kind of aura, as if all the vitality and mysteries had been radiated. How did you do it? Dizong of Goguryeo was shocked and impatiently asked. Tang Zheng stopped and said thoughtfully, Could it be that only I can resonate with this place of origin and then comprehend the Tao? Place of origin? Tao? What are you talking about? Dizong of Goguryeo was even more confused. Back then, he was the first person to comprehend the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Only now did he realize that the Ksitigarbha Sutra's breadth and profoundness far exceeded his imagination. There were even many things that he didn't understand, such as what Tang Zheng was saying now. Tang Zheng no longer hid anything and told him everything about the origin ground and the underworld. Dizong of Goguryeo was stunned. The Ksitigarbha Sutra that he had comprehended was actually of the same origin as the underworld. How could there be a connection between the ghost realm and the underworld? Dizong of Goguryeo could not figure it out, so he could only hope for Tang Zheng. Do you know why the world of spirits and souls is a mother-child world? Tang Zheng suddenly asked. There are all kinds of strange things in the boundless universe. The so-called mother and child worlds were two worlds that depended on each other and lived together. Everyone knew this, but even the Emperor of Heaven and Dizong of Goguryeo didn't know why the world of spirits and souls was a mother-child world. In their cognitive world, this was a phenomenon that originally existed, and they had never thought about the deeper reasons. The chaos separated heaven and earth and formed the world of spirits. The heavenly axiom and the underworld competed. The heavenly axiom won by a narrow margin, but the underworld did not accept its fate. Instead, it opened up another way and opened up the world of spirits and souls. Somehow, the world of spirits and the world of spirits were connected and became a mother-child world. Even if the heavenly axiom knew this, it couldn't change it. Tang Zheng's words were loud and clear, and every word was deafening. No one expected it, and they were all stunned. This was the inside story that Tang Zheng learned after his epiphany. At that time, he was also very shocked. The origin of the world of spirits and souls was incredible, and the relationship between the two was more complicated than they had thought before. Listening to a gentleman's words was better than reading 10 years of books. Everyone looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Seeing that his face was serious and his words were conclusive, they knew that he was not talking nonsense. Moreover, such words were absolutely not nonsense, so naturally, no one doubted it. Is this what you know after your epiphany? Chittagarbha Bodhisattva recovered after a long time and asked doubtfully. Tang Zheng nodded and sighed. Yes, I didn't expect the truth to be so bizarre. The heavenly axiom and the underworld have always been enemies. In the past, there had always been peace because the underworld had always been limited to the world of spirits and had not been developed. Now, Dizong of Goguryeo has truly comprehended the Ksitigarbha Sutra and developed the underworld. But Dizong of Goguryeo is limited to the world of spirits and can't really stay in the world of spirits for a long time. So the impact on the heavenly axiom is relatively small. Tang Zheng paused for a moment, shook his head, and smiled bitterly. I just didn't expect that Dizong of Goguryeo would teach me the Ksitigarbha Sutra. I gradually understood the underworld, and I am not restricted by the world of spirits and souls. I can freely travel between the world of spirits and souls, which threatens the heavenly axiom. Although, in the heaven realm, Yan Qingyi vowed that the heavenly axiom was doing this for the heaven realm. Now that Tang Zheng knew the cause and effect, he gradually understood that things were not as simple as she said. The heavenly axiom's move was not only to deal with the heaven realm, but also to deal with its old enemy, the underworld. All eyes fell on Tang Zheng. Their eyes were different, but they could not hide the shock. He was the fuse of all of this. Whether it was the heavenly axiom or the underworld, they were all revolving around him. Dizong of Goguryeo and the Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng with the most complicated and thought-provoking gazes. One of them comprehended the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and the other comprehended the heavenly book. In the end, Tang Zheng actually combined the strengths of both and left them behind. Even though both of them were the 9th stage of the Great Ascension stage, Tang Zheng was a master of two different powers. So if anyone would say that they had absolute confidence in being able to defeat Tang Zheng, they would most likely be boasting shamelessly. The two of them sighed and looked at each other. They could see each other's thoughts. After a long time, Dizong of Goguryeo asked, Tang Zheng, what are you going to do next? How are you going to deal with the heavenly axiom? Tang Zheng pondered and said, Yan Qingyi was imprisoned by me in the heaven realm, but I believe that the heavenly axiom was not completely imprisoned by me. Therefore, once we leave the origin, the heavenly axiom will definitely counterattack, and it will not be an ordinary counterattack. I'm afraid it will be very powerful. Then what should we do? Dizong of Goguryeo was shocked. He did not know much about the heavenly axiom, but the heavenly axiom had defeated the underworld back then. For the time being, I haven't thought of a good idea. However, Dizong of Goguryeo Both of us are targets of the heavenly axiom, so we have to work together in the future. If there's any trouble, we have to support each other. We have to resist the attack of the heavenly axiom, Tang Zheng said seriously. Dizong of Goguryeo thought for a while, then nodded heavily and said, I understand. If there's anything you need, just let me know. I'll definitely help you. Dizong of Goguryeo had mixed feelings. He paused for a moment and said, Then I'll go back to the ghost realm to prepare. Tang Zheng did not stay for long and nodded. Dizong of Goguryeo turned around and walked towards the wordless wall with a stomach full of new information that had not been completely digested. When he stepped through the ghost gate quietly disappeared, and the wordless wall returned to its original state. The others stared at Tang Zheng. Without a doubt, he had become the backbone. Even the respected Emperor of Heaven had to step aside and take Tang Zheng as the core. Next, we'll leave the origin. As for the reaction of the heavenly axiom, we'll deal with it as it comes. If we're of one mind, we'll be able to dispel the clouds and see the blue sky. Tang Zheng encouraged everyone. Chapter 1732. To Yin Qingyi, there was no way out of the origin ground. However, after Tang Zheng gained enlightenment, he knew the origin ground like the back of his hand. Without needing Wu Junshan and Lan Yu's guidance, he led everyone out of the origin ground smoothly. Just as he stepped out of the origin ground, his heart skipped a beat, and he subconsciously stopped in his tracks. The others looked at him in a daze and asked, What's wrong? The heavenly Tao is moving. As soon as he finished speaking, he was like an old monk in meditation. He no longer spoke, and his mind was completely immersed in the heavenly realm. The others saw the clues and kept quiet. They looked at Tang Zheng with worry and curiosity. In the heavenly realm, Yin Qingyi's eyes were overflowing with light. He stared at the 9 heavens and roared, Tang Zheng, you want to trap my heavenly Tao? Dream on. The vigorous aura could topple mountains and overturn seas. It was even stronger than before. It was as if he was a completely different person. Tang Zheng's heart trembled as he understood what was going on. In the origin ground, the heavenly Tao was suppressed by the tunnel, so it could not fully unleash its strength. Once Tang Zheng left the origin ground, this suppression would disappear. The heavenly Tao completely erupted, stirring up the clouds in the heavenly realm. A black cloud appeared above Yin Qingyi's head. Yin Qingyi grabbed with his hand, and the black cloud turned into a long blade, slashing towards the 9 heavens. Kacha! The sky seemed to be split into 2, and a thunderous sound rang out. Heavenly Tao, this is the heavenly realm. How can you be so rash? Tang Zheng roared. A gust of wind blew and descended from the sky, landing on Yin Qingyi's head. The long blade was twisted into pieces. Yin Qingyi's feet seemed to have grown roots. No matter how the wind blew, his body did not move at all. Yin Qingyi raised his eyelids and looked at the sky with contempt, saying, Tang Zheng, you left the origin ground and still want to suppress me? Dream on. Whoosh! Suddenly, Yin Qingyi left the ground and charged towards the 9 heavens like a cannonball. He brought with him a biting cold wind, as if he wanted to tear the sky apart. Whoosh! A gust of astral wind condensed in the 9 heavens and turned into a giant golden palm. It slammed down fiercely towards Yin Qingyi. The golden palm fell rapidly, and the lower it went, the bigger it became. When it got close to Yin Qingyi, it almost occupied half the sky. No matter how Yin Qingyi dodged, there was no way she could escape the attack range of the golden palm. Yin Qingyi widened her eyes in despair as she stared at the golden palm right in front of her. Boom! With a loud bang, Yin Qingyi was slapped down from midair and smashed into the ground. Then, the golden palm slapped Yin Qingyi, and the ground was immediately filled with smoke and dust. Everything was silent. The wind had stopped, and the rain had stopped. Everything had disappeared as if it had never happened. Only the golden palm and the sunken ground showed what had just happened. Are you satisfied now? Tang Zheng's voice rang out in the sky. He knew very well that this attack couldn't completely kill Yin Qingyi, or the heavenly Tao, but it definitely wouldn't feel good. Tang Zheng, you want to kill me with this little ability? Yin Qingyi's voice was squeezed out from under the golden palm. Suddenly, the golden palm trembled violently and was actually pushed up by a huge force. Tang Zheng shivered. He knew that this was the power of the heavenly Tao. Since the heavenly Tao and the heavenly Tao were enemies, then all the more he should use the Ksitigarbha Sutra. With a thought, a burst of Sanskrit descended from the sky, turning into golden Sanskrit characters that floated onto the golden palm. Immediately, the trembling of the golden palm weakened, and it actually pressed down bit by bit. You've comprehended the heavenly Tao. Yin Qingyi shouted, clearly very shocked. Just as I expected, the heavenly Tao has already chosen you. Tang Zheng sneered and asked, facing the heavenly Tao, are you sure you can win? Can you still boast so shamelessly? Yin Qingyi didn't have a chance to refute, because the golden palm had already been completely enveloped by the Sanskrit characters. It shone brightly, as if it had changed greatly. Boom! After a loud bang, the golden palm once again slammed heavily onto the ground, and Yin Qingyi's voice could no longer be heard. Minutes and seconds passed, and Tang Zheng wasn't sure if Yin Qingyi was alive or dead. The golden palm slowly rose, and Yin Qingyi lay dead in the handprint on the ground. She's not dead. Tang Zheng was shocked by the tenacity of the other party's vitality. Yin Qingyi's eyes gradually opened, and from this pair of eyes, Tang Zheng saw a trace of mystery. It seemed that Yin Qingyi was different from before. Tang Zheng, let me go. Yin Qingyi was furious, and she pointed to the sky as she shouted. Her tone was completely different from before. Yin Qingyi, it's you? Tang Zheng saw through the mystery with a single sentence. Of course it's me. Yin Qingyi fiercely shouted. Let me leave this damn place quickly, otherwise I will definitely not let you go. It really is you. Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea and said, Yin Qingyi, aren't you proficient in prophecy techniques? Moreover, you have now obtained the true inheritance of the heavenly Tao, so the power of your prophecy techniques should be even greater. Why don't you try to predict when you will be able to leave? Yin Qingyi was slightly startled, and her expression became unnatural. Prophecy techniques couldn't be made at any time, and it had to depend on luck. I don't need to use divination techniques to know that I will leave this damn place very soon. You're going against the heavenly Tao. You are out of luck. Yin Qingyi's voice was powerful and resonant as he spoke in an aggressive manner. Tang Zheng gave a meaningful smile and said, I think you don't dare to use prophecy techniques. Yin Qingyi was about to refute when she suddenly froze. Her eyes became mysterious, and the corners of her mouth hooked up into an unfathomable smile. What's wrong with you? Tang Zheng looked at this strange scene and curiously asked. After a while, Yin Qingyi seemed to have woken up from a dream. She mysteriously said, Your heaven realm can't trap me. I already know when I will leave. Tang Zheng shivered and asked, You predicted it? Yin Qingyi proudly laughed. Why would I tell you? In short, don't even think of using this insignificant heaven realm to trap me. How could Tang Zheng not understand? There was a high chance that Yin Qingyi had predicted the future. Then what would the future be like? Tang Zheng's heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat, and he became incomparably curious. But Yin Qingyi kept her mouth shut, so he couldn't do anything about it. This is the heaven realm. If you don't want to say it, it's not up to you. Tang Zheng shouted, and an invisible force trapped Yin Qingyi, and she lightly flew into the sky. However, Yin Qingyi closed her eyes. She actually fell into a deep sleep, and no matter how Tang Zheng called her, she didn't respond at all. Tang Zheng stopped and stared at her in a daze. Where did the heavenly Tao go? Did it leave her, or even the heaven realm? There was no answer to all of this. Maybe when Yin Qingyi woke up in the future, all the answers would gradually be revealed. The heavenly Tao was originally restless, as if it wanted to counterattack, but in the end, it was suppressed by Tang Zheng, and this way, the heaven realm calmed down. Chapter 1733. When everyone saw Tang Zheng's reaction just now, they had already guessed something. Something must have happened in the heaven realm to cause such a big reaction from Tang Zheng. This matter was related to the heavenly law, so there was no one who was not curious and concerned. Tang Zheng looked around and said in a deep voice, "Something happened in the heaven realm. I suspect that the heavenly Tao has escaped. I did not truly trap the heavenly Tao in the heaven realm." Ah! Cries of surprise rose from all around as everyone asked at once. Then what about Yin Xingyi? I did trap her in the heaven realm, but she didn't cooperate at all. It was impossible for me to get the whereabouts of the heavenly Tao from her. In addition, Yin Xingyi has already used her divination technique. I'm afraid that she has foreseen something. Now that she has nothing to fear, she's not in a hurry to fight me and escape. A fierce look flashed across Li Xiaoyin's face as he said, "Yin Xingyi is not a dangerous person. Why don't we just kill her?" Tang Jing shook his head slightly and said, "It's not that easy. Killing Yin Xingyi is not difficult, but the difficult part is the heavenly Tao behind her. Without her, the heavenly Tao, and I will lose a medium, and it will be even more impossible for me to know what the heavenly Tao is doing. Now that the heavenly Tao is still in contact with her, I might be able to find out the intentions and movements of the heavenly Tao from her." The others nodded in agreement. This was a helpless action. The few of them discussed for a while, but couldn't come up with a definite answer. They could only temporarily suppress this matter and return to the capital. In the capital, when they returned, it caused quite a stir. Not only did Wu Junshan and Lan Yu return, the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy also returned. In this way, their strength would greatly increase. Even if someone came to invade, there was no need to worry. When Wu saw his master and his wife, he was incomparably excited. When Tang Dehai found out that Tang Zheng had buried the hatchet with them, he was also very gratified because this was his long-cherished wish. After hearing Wu mention the eruption of Tang Zheng's pure yang energy, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu realized that their previous thoughts were too idealistic and simplistic. They originally wanted to come back and warn Tang Zheng after they had mastered the sword art, but they didn't expect him to erupt with pure yang energy in advance. Fortunately, he was able to survive the ordeal. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to see their son again. When they thought of this, they felt a lingering fear in their hearts. Master's wife, Tang Zheng's pure yang energy will erupt again. It is said that at that time, it will not be so easy to suppress it. His life is in danger. Wu Yu said earnestly and worriedly. Lan Yu's expression changed slightly as he said anxiously, "Is there really no way at all?" "Yes." Wu nodded. Lan Yu was overjoyed and hurriedly asked, "What method?" "Empyrean Fairy. She has the 9 saint body, which is the exact opposite of Tang Zheng's physique. The pure yin energy in her body can neutralize Tang Zheng's pure yang energy. This is the most likely glimmer of hope." Wu replied. This was something she had been thinking about for a long time. She had to tell her mistress and let her make a decision. Lan Yu immediately understood Wu Yu's intentions. He looked outside the house and saw the Empyrean Fairy sitting in the courtyard, guiding Nana in her cultivation. Master's wife, the Empyrean Fairy's identity is special. She is the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven. She might not agree to this matter. Wu said worriedly. Lan Yu's eyes gradually became resolute as he said, "Tang Zheng is my son. It was not easy for me to find my son. I will not sit idly by. Even if I have to sacrifice myself, I will let him continue to live. I will go find the Empyrean Fairy. Perhaps if Mistress takes action, there will be a glimmer of hope." Wu said expectantly. Lan Yu came to the courtyard and watched as the Empyrean Fairy meticulously guided his disciple. His heart also became nervous. He took a deep breath and summoned his courage to walk in front of her. The Empyrean Fairy blankly raised her head and asked curiously, "Is there something you need?" "Fu Yao, I have something to discuss with you." The Empyrean Fairy slightly knitted her brows and said to Nana, "Go to the side and play first." Nana stared with her big black eyes and sized up the two of them. She skipped to the side and occasionally peeked out. What's the matter? Lan Yu went straight to the point and said, Fu Yao, I have something to ask of you. The Empyrean fairy's frown deepened. She and Lan Yu did not have much interaction. She could not guess what Lan Yu wanted from her. I'm all ears. Fu Yao, you have the 9 yin saint body, and little Zheng has the 9 yang saint body. Your physiques are completely opposite. If you combine, it will be mutually beneficial. So I beg you to save little Zheng. Lan Yu sincerely said. However, the Empyrean fairy stood up and looked at Lan Yu in astonishment. She asked, Do you know what you are saying? Lan Yu nodded his head, I know. Little Zheng will soon be 20 years old. During the new year, he exploded with pure yang energy and was almost unable to reverse the situation. If he explodes again, his life will be in danger. The Empyrean fairy's heart tightened. She expressionlessly said, I understand your feelings, but this request is too unreasonable. After saying this, she flicked her sleeves and left. She did not give Lan Yu a chance to continue speaking. Lan Yu looked at her back in disappointment. He was powerless to do anything. Nana hid not too far away. She used her energy to hear everything clearly. Although she did not understand, she still remembered it in her heart. When Mu Hongyan came back from work that night, she quietly pulled her to the side and asked, Mom, is Big Brother going to die? What? Mu Hongyan was shocked. She did not know what was going on. She grabbed Nana's shoulders and anxiously asked, Nana, what are you talking about? Nana sadly said, Big Brother's pure yang energy is about to explode. He is about to leave us, right? After saying this, tears fell from her eyes. Mu Hongyan hurriedly hugged her daughter. She gently patted her back and said, Tang Zheng will not die. Don't worry. Did you hear something? Master did not agree to save Big Brother, so Big Brother is dead for sure. Nana said tearfully. Mu Hongyan was confused. After asking for a long time, she gradually understood the situation. It turned out that Lan Yu had put in a lot of effort to plead with the Empyrean fairy. However, the Empyrean fairy did not agree. During the spring festival, everyone proposed to find the Empyrean fairy and have her save Tang Zheng. After Tang Zheng escaped, everyone temporarily suppressed this idea. Now that the old matter was brought up again, Mu Hongyan's heart felt like it was being pressed down by a huge rock, making it hard for her to breathe. She understood Lan Yu's actions. After all, she also had a child. For her child, a mother was willing to do anything. In addition, she was also very worried about Tang Zheng. If the Empyrean fairy did not save him, then how would Tang Zheng get through this difficult time? Her mind was also in a panic. After comforting her daughter, she opened the door and walked out. She directly knocked on Lu Qingmei's door. Big Sister Mu, why are you looking for me? Lu Qingmei saw that there was a strange expression between her eyebrows. Her heart tightened, and she quickly asked, Chapter 1734. Mu Hongyan and Lu Qingmei were discussing Tang Zheng's matter in the room when Lan Yu knocked on the door and entered Tang Zheng's room. She looked at Tang Zheng worriedly, unable to hide the worry on her face. Tang Zheng looked at her in astonishment and asked, What happened? Little Zheng, I heard that your pure yang energy erupted during the spring festival? Lan Yu asked. Tang Zheng nodded his head. That is already in the past. I'm fine now. How could it be that simple? I've heard that your pure yang energy will completely erupt on your 20th birthday. That's the greatest danger. Tang Zheng was momentarily at a loss for words, but looking at her face, he could not bear it. He could not help but hold her hand and comforted her. Relax, your son is strong, so he will definitely survive. Lan Yu shook her head. It is not that easy. Only the Empyrean fairy can save you, right? Not necessarily, Tang Zheng said weakly. From what he understood of the situation, it seemed that the Empyrean fairy was really his only hope. Then what other methods do you have? Lan Yu asked. Tang Zheng's face was embarrassed as he resentfully said, Currently, this is the only method. Lan Yu was disappointed and said, Then isn't only the Empyrean fairy able to save you? Tang Zheng was speechless, but it was clear that he tacitly agreed. Is there a way for her to save you? Tang Zheng gave a bitter smile. This is not a small matter. It is related to her reputation, so it is not that easy. But this is related to your life. Your life is more important than your reputation. Lan Yu stubbornly said. Tang Zheng shook his head and said, I do not wish to sacrifice others in order to save myself. I do not wish to go against other people's wishes. There will always be a way. There will always be a way, so you do not need to worry. Seeing her son's firm attitude, Lan Yu's throat moved, but in the end, she swallowed back the words of persuasion. There's something else I need to tell you. I've talked to your grandfather. Your real birth date is earlier than your current birthday. Lan Yu changed the topic. Tang Zheng's heart tightened, and he immediately asked, Then when is my real birthday? 26th of the second lunar month. Tang Zheng finally realized the seriousness of the problem. He had been celebrating another birthday, which was the 18th day of the third lunar month. That was the day Tang Dahai picked him up. In this way, the date when his pure yang energy would completely erupt would be brought forward. It was already the beginning of the second lunar month, which meant that there were only 20 days left until his birthday. If he couldn't find another way in these 20 days, and the Empyrean Fairy wasn't willing to save him, then his pure yang energy would cause him to explode and die. Tang Zheng was well aware of this, and also realized the seriousness of the matter. He didn't have much time left. Lan Yu also knew the seriousness of the matter. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone to the Empyrean Fairy so abruptly. Seeing her son's expression become serious, she firmly said, I will definitely find a way to save you. I won't lose you a second time. Don't worry, I'll take care of it myself. Tang Zheng hurriedly comforted her, but Lan Yu obviously didn't listen and left the room. Tang Zheng looked at her back as she left. For a moment, his heart felt as if it was being pressed down by a 1,000-pound boulder. Right now, he had too many responsibilities. If he really died from the explosion of pure yang energy, the people around him would face serious problems. There were too many things he hadn't had the time to do. At the same time, in Fang Shishir's room, a secret meeting was quietly going on. Mu Hongyan and Lu Qingmei didn't come up with a solution, so the two of them found Fang Shishir. Without a doubt, among Tang Zheng's women, Fang Shishir's position was rather special. This was because she was the first person to privately pledge her life to Tang Zheng. After listening to Mu Hongyan's narrative, Fang Shishir realized the seriousness of the matter, so she gathered Yi Dingdang, Wu, and Li Xiaotian to work together. Other than Ling Er, all the women who had been intimate with Tang Zheng were gathered together. However, no one was jealous. Everyone had a worried expression on their faces. Wu said worriedly, I heard from Mistress that Tang Zheng's real birthday is the 26th of February, which means that there are still more than 20 days left. Time is of the essence. If we can't find a way to dissolve the pure yang energy in this period of time, then the only way left is Empyrean Fairy. But Empyrean Fairy has already rejected it. Mu Hongyan said, Worst comes to worst, we'll just go beg her. Yi Dingdang was not afraid of anything and directly said, Beg her on what grounds? Li Xiaotian asked. Everyone was silent. They were all women and understood women the best. A woman's life was the most important thing. Reputation was probably the most important thing. Especially since Empyrean Fairy was from ancient times, the Emperor of Heaven's daughter. No one could go against her wishes. Otherwise, the Emperor of Heaven would not sit idly by. If they angered the Emperor of Heaven, the gains would not make up for the losses. They would create a powerful enemy for Tang Zheng. This won't do. That won't do. Then what should we do? We can't just watch as Tang Zheng dies. Yi Dingdang complained in annoyance. Of course not. Fang Shishir was silent for a long time, then said, We should at least try. We need to first understand Empyrean Fairy's thoughts and what exactly made her reject. Right? Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Marshall nodded in agreement. Li Xiaotian added, Our goal cannot be limited to Empyrean Fairy alone. There is also the Emperor of Heaven. Back then in the Gate of Heaven, the Emperor of Heaven wanted to recruit Tang Zheng as his son-in-law. That is why we need to find a loophole from the Emperor of Heaven. Yi Dingdong's eyes lit up and hurriedly nodded. Right, back then the Emperor of Heaven really wanted to recruit this son-in-law. If he still has this thought, then we will have succeeded in more than half. The Emperor of Heaven could definitely influence Empyrean Fairy. As long as the Emperor of Heaven opened his mouth, the success rate of this matter would greatly increase. If the Emperor of Heaven really recruits him as his son-in-law, then what about us? Lu Qingmei suddenly threw out a question. Everyone's expression turned cold as they realized the seriousness of the matter. Right now, everyone was at peace and accompanied Tang Zhong. But if the Empyrean Fairy joined, and with the Emperor of Heaven as her backing, their position would be in jeopardy. It was even to the point that the Emperor of Heaven might let them leave Tang Zhong for the sake of their daughter's happiness, severing their relationship with each other. What kind of person was the Emperor of Heaven? How could he tolerate his daughter sharing Tang Zhong with other people? This was a very thorny problem. As soon as this was said, the room fell into silence. They had experienced ups and downs with Tang Zhong, and it was not easy for them to get to where they were today. Who would be willing to be separated from Tang Zhong? It was precisely because no one was willing to be separated that they acquiesced to the current situation of several women coexisting. Many people subconsciously looked at Fang Shishir because her position was the most special and naturally had the most right to speak. Fang Shishir raised her head with a heavy expression. She looked around and saw everyone's reaction. She knew that everyone was waiting for her to express her opinion. Chapter 1735. Fang Shishir's eyes kept changing. It was clear that her heart was fluctuating greatly. In the end, she slowly opened her mouth. If the Empyrean Fairy agrees to save Tang Zhong, I am willing to withdraw and help them. What? Everyone was shocked. They never thought that Fang Shishir's words would be so shocking, actually saying such words. What this meant, everyone was very clear. Her so-called withdrawal was to leave Tang Zhong, fly far away, and never see him again. This was a very painful thing for her. It was hard to imagine, but she still said it so casually, it was easy to imagine the shock in everyone's heart. Of course, she was not willing to leave Tang Zhong, but for Tang Zhong's life, she was willing to make this sacrifice and hand Tang Zhong over to the Empyrean Fairy. Yi Dingdang indignantly said, Sure, how can you bear to leave Tang Zhong? Fang Shishir's expression was firm. Her teeth bit her lips until they turned white, and said, Of course I am not willing. But in order to save Tang Zhong, I am willing to give up everything, even my life. These words were powerful and resonant, like a heavy hammer striking the bottom of everyone's hearts. They looked at each other in dismay, their eyes silently communicating, and gradually they understood each other's thoughts. Muongyan was the first to stand, and said, If the Empyrean Fairy saves Tang Zhong, I am also willing to leave him. I am also willing. Marshall followed closely behind. Lu Qingmei took a step forward and stood beside Mu Hongyan. Although she did not say a word, her actions and expression said everything. She was also willing to make this sacrifice. Li Xiaodian took a deep breath. Although he was not willing, he still followed the crowd and said, I am also willing to withdraw. The only one left was Yi Dingdang. Her expression kept changing, her eyes moving around everyone. Her lips were bitten to the point of bleeding, and 2 lines of tears flowed out. If the Empyrean Fairy can really save her, I'm willing. She seemed to have used up all the strength in her body to say those words. Her whole body was soft, and if Fang Shishir hadn't hurriedly supported her, she would have fallen to the ground. At this point, everyone had reached a consensus. In order to save Tang Zhong's life, they were willing to make such a huge sacrifice. What do we do next? Li Xiaodian asked. Everyone looked at each other, and in the end, their eyes fell on Fang Shishir. She bravely stepped forward and said, I'll go find the Empyrean Fairy. I'll talk to her. I'm going too, Yi Dingdang said tearfully. The others were eager to give it a try, obviously wanting to go as well. Mu Hongyan shook her head and said, No, we have so many people. The Empyrean fairy will think that we are bullying her with numbers, as long as we can save Tang Zheng. So what if we bully her with numbers? Li Xiaotian said coldly. Back then, her memories had been erased, and she had become a blank sheet of paper. However, over time, some of Li Xiaotian's innate personality had gradually revealed itself. Fang Shishir thought for a while, and then tactfully declined, "I'll go alone. I definitely won't let everyone down. I'll definitely make her agree. Then we'll wait for your news." Fang Shishir struck while the iron was hot. She turned around and walked out. After all, Tang Zheng didn't have much time left. Every second was a race against time. The Empyrean fairy lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Everything that had happened during the day was inexplicable to her. Lanyu had actually asked her to save Tang Zheng. She was very clear on how to save Tang Zheng. Her calm heart couldn't help but be stirred up. She turned over and thought in annoyance. Lanyu is really unreasonable. She wants me to save him, and she's using this kind of method. What kind of person does she think I am? Dong dong dong. The sound of knocking came from the door. The Empyrean fairy pricked up her ears and asked, "Who is it?" "It's me. Are you asleep?" Fang Shishir's voice squeezed in through the crack in the door. The Empyrean fairy sat up and stared suspiciously at the door. Why was Fang Shishir looking for her in the middle of the night? She hesitated for a moment, then waved her hand. The door creaked open. She got off the bed and walked toward the door. Fang Shishir walked in, and their eyes met. The atmosphere became a bit strange. The Empyrean fairy asked suspiciously, "It's so late. Why are you looking for me?" "I have something important to discuss with you," Fang Shishir said in a serious tone. The Empyrean fairy's heart was in her throat. She looked at Fang Shishir with a burning gaze. The two of them rarely had such a heavy atmosphere. "What is it? I'm all ears." After the Empyrean fairy invited Fang Shishir to sit down, she sat down on the side and waited. Fang Shishir did not hesitate and said directly, "There are still 20 days until Tang Zheng's 20th birthday. His pure yang energy will completely erupt on that day. At that time, we won't know whether he's dead or alive. Therefore, it's very likely that he will die." Hearing this, the Empyrean fairy's heart moved. Her expression also became serious, but she did not interrupt Fang Shishir. She was all ears. During the spring festival, his pure yang energy had already erupted once. Fortunately, he used the extreme yang energy to temporarily suppress the agitated pure yang energy. But now, not only has his cultivation increased, his birthday is coming soon. This is a double test. If he's not careful, he will explode from the pure yang energy and die. Fang Shishir's gaze never left the Empyrean fairy, as if she wanted to observe her reaction. "So, you wanted to save him?" the Empyrean fairy asked. Fang Shishir nodded. "Do you know what this means?" the Empyrean fairy asked in a deep voice. "I know. We have already discussed it. If you are willing to save him, we are willing to withdraw and fulfill your wish." Fang Shishir took a deep breath and used a lot of strength to say this sentence. The Empyrean fairy was stunned. She did not expect Fang Shishir to raise this condition. She asked in astonishment, "Who are you?" "Me, Ding Dang, Sister Mu, Sister Mei, Wu, and Li Xiaotian." The Empyrean fairy said their names one by one. "This is our decision, so you don't have to worry about me deceiving you." The Empyrean fairy's expression became interesting. She said meaningfully, "You mean that you are willing to save Tang Zheng and then leave him and let me be with him?" "Yes." Fang Shishir nodded heavily. "As long as you save him." The Empyrean fairy sized up Fang Shishir. The other's actions were out of her expectations. In addition, there were really too many people who cared about Tang Zheng. During the day, it was Lanyu. At night, it was Fang Shishir. They took turns to force her to agree. The Empyrean fairy was a proud person. How could she be manipulated by others? Her expression gradually became gloomy. She stared at Fang Shishir aggressively and said, "Do you think I will agree just because you want me to?" I won't." "You refuse?" Fang Shishir was shocked. "You have a close relationship with Tang Zheng. Are you willing to watch him explode and die?" The Empyrean fairy's heart thumped, but she still said resolutely, "Everyone has their own fate. If he really explodes and dies, then that is his fate. So please go back." Chapter 1736. The Empyrean fairy gazed at the door with a complicated expression. This group of people actually dared to suggest such an outrageous idea. How preposterous! Her mind couldn't help but flash back to Tang Zheng bits and pieces. The two of them had met in the ancient tomb. If not for Tang Zheng's rescue, she would probably still be in a deep sleep. Even if she woke up, it would still be difficult for her to escape from the first emperor of Qin. In short, her fate would have been completely different. Because of Tang Zheng, she had truly regained her freedom. Then, along the way, she had fought side by side with Tang Zheng and weathered through many ups and downs. The relationship between the two was quite thought-provoking. Phew! The Empyrean fairy shook her head fiercely. Even she herself didn't know what the relationship between the two of them was or what it meant. She simply decided to ignore it. If anyone were to disturb her with this matter in the future, she would definitely chase them out. Knock, knock. Not long after, a series of knocks sounded from the door. The Empyrean fairy's brows trembled as she stared fixedly at the door like two raised swords. Could it be that Feng Shishir had returned? Or was it someone else? Who is it? The Empyrean fairy asked in an annoyed tone. Yaoer, it's me. The Emperor of Heaven's voice squeezed through the crack in the door. Father. The Empyrean fairy was shocked. She quickly walked over to the door and saw that it was indeed the Emperor of Heaven. She asked in astonishment, Father, what business do you have with me? The Emperor of Heaven looked at her kindly and asked, Can't I come see you? The Empyrean fairy shook her head hurriedly. Of course not. The Emperor of Heaven entered the room and looked around. Your room is too simple. A girl's room should be more decorated and warm. The Empyrean fairy broke into laughter. I've long since passed that age. I'm old. Nonsense, my daughter isn't old. She's still so young and lovable. The Emperor of Heaven couldn't wait to correct him. Besides, my daughter hasn't found her ideal husband yet. How can you say that I'm old? Ideal husband. These four words made the Empyrean fairy feel strange. She looked at the Emperor of Heaven in astonishment, not knowing why he would mention this. The Emperor of Heaven didn't seem to notice the strange look in the Empyrean fairy's eyes as he continued, Yaoer, do you have a Mr. Right in your heart? Father, why are you asking this question? I was just casually asking. After all, as parents, we all want to see our children happy and complete their lives. The Emperor of Heaven said with a smile. My life is complete, said the Empyrean fairy. The Emperor of Heaven's expression turned cold as he solemnly said, Men and women should get married when they grow up. You haven't even gotten married yet, so how can your life be considered complete? Who said that women must get married? The Empyrean fairy asked with a frown. The Emperor of Heaven looked at his daughter suspiciously and said, Yaoer, have you been corrupted by the so-called freedom of thought? You can't be like some women nowadays. If a girl doesn't get married, what kind of scandal is that? Then why didn't you urge me to get married in the past? In the past. The Emperor of Heaven was slightly startled. In the past, when you were corrupted by pure energy, your life was more important. How could you have the leisure to talk about marriage? Now that you no longer have this concern, you naturally have to think about marriage. The Empyrean fairy really wanted to roll her eyes. She had overlooked a problem. Her father was someone from the ancient times, so his thinking was completely different from modern people. The Empyrean fairy had stayed in modern society for too long and was imperceptibly influenced. Her thinking was also more modern, so she wasn't in a hurry to talk about marriage. Who would have thought that the first thing the Emperor of Heaven did after returning to the mortal world was to urge her to get married? Seeing that his daughter was speechless, the Emperor of Heaven guessed a bit of her thoughts and sternly said, Yaoer, you've already been delayed for so many years, and now you can't continue to delay. So, right now, my number one priority is your marriage. Father, when did you become so sentimental? You're like an old woman. The Empyrean fairy helplessly said, "Most parents are like this. Is there a problem?" "I don't think there's a problem." The Emperor of Heaven replied with a question. The Empyrean fairy was stunned. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and had no words to say. The Emperor of Heaven continued to say, "Quickly tell Father, who is your sweetheart?" "I don't have a sweetheart." The Empyrean fairy's cheeks reddened. The Emperor of Heaven sternly said, "If you don't have one, then I'll recommend you one. What do you think of that brat Tang Zheng?" Tang Zheng. The Empyrean fairy was shocked. Her expression became interesting. "Father, why are you like this? If you don't have a sweetheart, then I can only choose one for you." As the saying goes, the parent's orders and the matchmaker's words. "How can my judgment be wrong?" The Emperor of Heaven said in a clear voice. His tone and expression were indisputable. The Empyrean fairy's face became even redder. She muttered in her heart, "Why did so many things happen in one day?" It was as if they had discussed it beforehand and wanted to set her up with Tang Zheng. Could it be that Tang Zheng had instigated them to come? Was this his intention? His heart couldn't help but beat fiercely a few times. There was actually a strange feeling in his heart. "You don't have any objections, right? Then it's decided." The Emperor of Heaven said. "Father, wait a moment. Who said I agreed?" The Empyrean fairy hurriedly cried out. "This is my own matter. How can I make such a hasty decision?" The Emperor of Heaven's expression became stern. "Who said it was hasty? This is the conclusion I came to after careful consideration and careful investigation. Although that brat Tang Zheng has many shortcomings, he is currently the most suitable candidate." "Why is he the most suitable candidate?" The Empyrean fairy helplessly asked. "Think about it. Among the current generation of outstanding individuals, who is the strongest? Naturally, it will be this brat. Moreover, his character is only SOSO, so he is barely a match for you." The Emperor of Heaven explained. The Empyrean fairy looked at her father with a burning gaze. Suddenly, her heart stirred. "Father, was it Tang Zheng who came looking for you?" "He came looking for me? For what?" The Emperor of Heaven was confused. "If he didn't come looking for you, then who told you to come here?" The Empyrean fairy asked suspiciously. "Do I need someone else to come looking for me? Of course, this is my own decision. This is my responsibility as a father. I don't need someone else to tell me what to do." The Emperor of Heaven said righteously as he raised his head high. "Really?" The Empyrean fairy was skeptical. She sized up the Emperor of Heaven from head to toe. "Of course it's true." The Emperor of Heaven couldn't help but feel a bit guilty under his daughter's gaze. In fact, he wasn't telling the truth. Although there was a hint of it in the gate of heaven, he had temporarily thrown it to the back of his mind. Now that the matter had been brought up again, it was all because of Lan Yu and Wu Junshan. This pair of parents who were worried sick for their son had personally come to the Emperor of Heaven to persuade him. The Emperor of Heaven's thoughts became active again. After thinking about it, he actually agreed for the first time. Chapter 1737. The Emperor of Heaven immediately agreed to Wu Junshan and Lan Yu. The parents of the two sides reached an agreement and went to work on their own children's thoughts. The Emperor of Heaven had a bad start. It seemed that the Empyrean fairy had seen through some clues, but the Emperor of Heaven insisted and did not reveal any specific details. The Emperor of Heaven looked at his daughter with concern and said sincerely, "Yaoer, I know you're worried. After all, that brat Tang Zheng is a playboy. He really isn't good enough for you, but I can still accept it. Father promises you that once you two are together, if he dares to flirt with other women again, I'll break his legs." "Father, who said I agreed to it?" The Empyrean fairy rolled her eyes helplessly. The Emperor of Heaven was unmoved and said to himself, "Don't worry, those beautiful women by his side won't be able to touch him. Father will definitely take care of this for you and not give others a chance to take advantage of you. You two can live your own lives and kiss each other. Haha, I'll hold my grandson soon." The Empyrean fairy could no longer maintain her composure. She angrily stomped her feet and said, "Father, How can you say this? Get out, get out. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I want to rest. Without any explanation, she pushed the Emperor of Heaven out of the room. After the door closed with a bang, the Emperor of Heaven could only stare at the door in a daze. Sigh. In the end, he sighed heavily and shook his head. He walked out of the villa and happened to see Wu Junshan and Lan Yu walk out of Tang Zhang's room. The two of them also had a look of disappointment. The two sides looked at each other and seemed to understand each other's thoughts. They met outside the villa with tacit understanding. How is it? Lan Yu asked impatiently. The Emperor of Heaven raised his head and said passionately, "Marriage is an important matter. Of course Yaoer will listen to me. There's no problem." Hearing this, Lan Yu and Wu Junshan's expressions became even more dejected and disappointed. "How are you? That kid must be overjoyed, right?" The Emperor of Heaven asked proudly. Lan Yu and Wu Junshan looked at each other, not knowing how to answer this question. Their expressions became complicated. The Emperor of Heaven's pupils shrank. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the two of them, saying, "What? Could it be that the brat has other ideas?" Wu Junshan hurriedly waved his hand and comforted. "Senior, please calm down. Of course, he won't have any objections. It's just that we're talking about free love right now, so we need them to interact in private." The Emperor of Heaven was not so easily fooled. He heard the implied meaning and his face darkened. He said, "What free love? It's a bunch of nonsense. Marriage was naturally decided by the parents. Do you think I don't know that brat Tang Zhang? He's proud and arrogant. Did he refuse?" "This," Wu Junshan stammered, at a loss for words. The celestial emperor flew into a rage. "How is my daughter not worthy of him? He actually dared to refuse Yaoer. How many people dream of such a good thing? But he actually refused. Preposterous." The Emperor of Heaven became angrier and angrier as he spoke. He wanted nothing more than to teach Tang Zhang a lesson, but when he thought of Tang Zhang's strength, he had no choice but to stop. After all, Tang Zhang possessed both the heavenly Tao and the Tao of Earth. Even he paled in comparison. How could he have the ability to teach Tang Zhang a lesson? Tang Zhang's strength was no longer the same as before. Even if he was the Emperor of Heaven, he could not really do anything to Tang Zhang. With this thought, the Emperor of Heaven's anger burned even more fiercely, but he had nowhere to vent it. He glared fiercely at Wu Junshan and his wife. They felt that they were in the wrong and could not help but lower their heads. However, the two of them were very clear that if they wanted to save Tang Zhang, they had to rely on the Empyrean Fairy. Naturally, they did not dare to offend the Emperor of Heaven. They hurriedly advised, "Senior, please calm down. This brat is too young and does not know anything. Don't worry, we will definitely change his mind." The Emperor of Heaven took a deep breath. He had no choice but to suppress the anger in his heart. He coldly snorted and said, "There are also his close female friends. After he and my daughter fly away together, there will naturally be no more such nonsense." This, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu were very clear about the story of Tang Zhang and his close female friends. They had experienced many ups and downs together, and it wasn't easy for them to get to where they were today. How could they be separated so easily? However, when they saw that the Emperor of Heaven's expression was terrifyingly gloomy, as if a storm was coming, the two of them finally braced themselves and hurriedly nodded in agreement. "Then I will wait for your news. If that brat does not understand the situation and refuses such a wonderful thing, don't blame me if he explodes and dies." The Emperor of Heaven was very clear why Wu Junshan and Lan Yu were so nervous. Tang Zhang's 20th birthday was approaching, and the Empyrean Fairy was their only chance. That was why they were so anxious. Of course, the Emperor of Heaven did not refuse them. Instead, he went with the flow because he truly admired Tang Zhang. Although he claimed to be a senior and did not seem to put Tang Zhang in his eyes, he did not dare slight Tang Zhang in the slightest. He also did not want to see him explode and die. Whether it was for the heavenly Tao or for other reasons, he hoped that Tang Zhang could continue to live. After all, there were still many things that Tang Zhang needed to do in the future. After watching the Emperor of Heaven leave with large strides, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other and felt bitter. They could not help but recall the scene in Tang Zheng's room just now. The two of them were beating around the bush, but Tang Zheng was very smart. He quickly understood the clues and figured out the purpose of their visit. He did not give the two of them a chance to persuade him. He took the initiative and made his opinion clear. He would not sacrifice the innocence of other women for his own life, especially the Empyrean fairy. In addition, he had always remembered the incident in the Gate of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven wanted to take him as his son-in-law, but the conditions were not easy. He would definitely be exclusive. In other words, once he was together with the Empyrean fairy, other women would have to stand aside and leave him forever. Would he do that? Of course not. Even if his life was hanging by a thread, he would not abandon his own woman. That was not something a man would do. He disdained to do that. Even though Tang Zheng knew his parents' good intentions, he still did not want to be entangled with them on this issue. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other speechlessly. They were very clear about the bitterness in their hearts. After a while, Lan Yu said, "Our son is so stubborn. What should we do? There will always be a way. We definitely cannot let him leave us. Since the Emperor of Heaven has already agreed, then the only problem is little Zheng. We have to find a breakthrough." Wu Junshan said in a deep voice. What is his breakthrough? Lan Yu muttered to herself. Suddenly, a light flashed through her mind. At the same time, Wu Junshan's eyes also lit up. The two of them looked at each other and lightly nodded as if they had seen through each other's thoughts. Wu Junshan indicated for Lan Yu to speak first. Lan Yu excitedly said, "His close female friends." Chapter 1738. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu found a breakthrough point and were the first to find Marshall, hoping that she would be the first breakthrough point. However, the news they received from Marshall Mouth shocked them greatly, causing their minds to be greatly shaken. These confidants had already worked together and discussed a countermeasure. They were willing to withdraw, thus helping Tang Zheng and the Empyrean fairy. You all, as a woman, how could Lan Yu not understand their feelings? She emotionally said, "Your sacrifices are too great." Marshall firmly shook his head. "As long as we can save Tang Zheng, we are willing to give up anything, even our lives." Lan Yu originally had 1,000 words, but they were suddenly stuck in her throat, and she could not say anything. On the contrary, she felt that her decision was cruel to these women, and she could not bear it. Marshall had already seen through the clues from Master's wife's reaction and said, "Master's wife, this is our joint decision. Don't think too much about it. All of you have sacrificed so much for little Zheng. As a mother, I thank all of you." Lan Yu suddenly took a step back and bowed deeply towards Marshall. Marshall was shocked and immediately retreated to the side, not daring to accept such a big bow. He said, "Master's wife, you are too serious. We all like Tang Zheng, so naturally we will not watch him explode and die. Normally, he is the one who protects us, but now it is our turn to protect him. Little Zheng, how can you have confidants like you?" Lan Yu sighed with emotion. Master's wife, Sure has already gone to find the Empyrean fairy, but was rejected by her. So, we are still thinking of a way to match the two of them. Marshall said in distress. What? You said the Empyrean fairy rejected? Wu Junshan was shocked and could not help but exclaim. Yes, it's about tonight. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other. Didn't the Emperor of Heaven say that the Empyrean fairy had agreed? Why did he go back on his word? No. The two of them immediately realized that things were not as simple as they thought. The Celestial Arch was definitely hiding something. Perhaps the Empyrean maiden didn't agree, but he purposely said that she did. If that was the case, things would be even more difficult. After all, if both parties did not agree, then this matter could not continue. Deep worry appeared in their eyes, and they were at a loss for what to do. Master, Mistress, what's wrong? Marshall looked at the two of them in surprise. Let me tell you a piece of bad news. We have already gone to find little Zheng in advance, and he does not agree to this matter. He does not wish to sacrifice others to fulfill himself. How is this sacrificing others? The Nine Heavens' profound maiden has known him for a long time. We are both women, so how can we not see that the Nine Heavens' profound maiden is interested in him? Marshall Hart said straightforwardly. It was precisely because of this point that several of his close female friends had reached a consensus. Because this matter had a foundation, it would be easier to handle. Otherwise, how could the other party agree to such a ridiculous thing when they casually pulled out a woman? Lan Yu also knew this, and hurriedly comforted him. Marshall, don't be impatient. This matter still has room to turn around. Although the parties involved are not cooperating, we can still operate from within. Wu nodded thoughtfully. I will listen to master and mistress. Then what should we do now? Tomorrow, we'll wait and see. Then, we'll think of a countermeasure. Lan Yu thought about it and decided to wait until tomorrow to see the reaction of the two of them before making a decision. The next day, everyone woke up early. Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at Tang Zheng and couldn't help but feel a little strange in her heart. After all, the words of Feng Shi and the Emperor of Heaven had caused waves to surge in her heart. When she saw Tang Zheng, she couldn't help but think of many things. The other women had long since understood that everyone wanted to matchmake the two of them. Although they were reluctant in their hearts, they did not show it on their faces. Instead, they were racking their brains to find an opportunity. Tang Zheng only knew what his parents were thinking, but he did not know that the others had already had this thought. He only felt that his parents were too concerned and did not carefully consider this suggestion. Moreover, he did not have a mood to think about this problem right now. Even if he only had a short lifespan, he had to take advantage of this opportunity to solve the remaining problems. What if he really couldn't keep his life? Naturally, he would do everything possible to remove all obstacles. Right now, the biggest obstacle was the Dragon Slayer and the sky beyond heaven. As for the heavenly Tao, he could not figure out for the time being, so he might as well ignore it. First, he had to get rid of the two enemies, the Dragon Slayer and Hao Tianwan. At the very least, he would be able to let many people have no worries. Therefore, he was racing against time. How could he have the time to consider the issue of love? Although there was no movement in Langia, he believed that there would be movement sooner or later. Back then, he and the Dragon King had already set up an inescapable net in Langia. As long as the Dragon Slayer entered Langia, he would definitely fall into their inescapable net. However, he and the Dragon King did not have absolute confidence in whether this inescapable net could completely trap the Dragon Slayer. After all, the Dragon Slayer would definitely not be an ordinary person who would visit Langia this time. If the leader of the Dragon Slayer entered Langia, the other party was also from the Dragon Clan, then it was really unknown whether the inescapable net could really trap the other party. Therefore, he had to go to the Dragon territory first and meet with the Dragon King to discuss whether they could consolidate the inescapable net in Langia. He was already at the 9th stage of the Mayana realm. Even if he really encountered the Dragon Slayer, he might not necessarily lose. While consolidating the inescapable net in Langia, it would naturally be better if he could take the initiative to attack. The others looked at Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy thoughtfully. Before they had time to think of what to say, Tang Zheng had already taken the lead and said, I have to leave for a while. What? This sentence was immediately like a stone thrown into the lake, stirring up circles of ripples. Everyone looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief. The pure yang energy was about to explode. Why was he still running around? Why didn't he think of solving the problem of the pure yang energy first? Where are you going? Feng Shi asked impatiently. Tang Zheng smiled and said, I have to go to the Dragon territory to deal with the Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer? Everyone was shocked. Everyone knew how powerful the Dragon Slayer was. Now that his life was at stake, he actually ran to deal with the Dragon Slayer. No. Feng Shi raised an objection for the first time. No. Tang Zheng looked at Feng Shi in surprise. In the past, she almost always stood behind him and supported him. Why did she object this time? Yes, no. Feng Shi nodded. The others nodded one after another. Yes, no. You can't go to the Dragon territory. Tang Zheng looked around. Everyone had the same opinion. They seemed to have discussed it beforehand. Tang Zheng was shocked. The sun rose from the west. Everyone was against him. He looked at everyone, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and asked, "Is there a problem?" "Of course there is a problem." Fang Shishir walked in front of him step by step. Her eyes were firm and her expression was serious. Chapter 1739. Not only did Fang Shishir have a serious expression, but the other women also had serious expressions as they stared at Tang Zheng, standing on the same side as Fang Shishir. Tang Zheng looked around and saw their strange reactions. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong? You can't go to the dragon domain." The women all agreed and said without any hesitation, "Why can't I go?" Tang Zheng asked back, "Your pure yang energy will completely erupt on your 20th birthday. If you stay in the dragon domain for too long, what will you do if your life is in danger? Your most important task right now is to dissolve your pure yang energy." Yi Dingdang said in a powerful voice. Tang Zheng gave an unconcerned smile and said, "It's not as serious as you say. Haven't I already controlled my pure yang energy? There won't be a problem." He was completely spouting nonsense. Now that his cultivation had increased rapidly, his pure yang energy was not as restless as before. This kind of abnormal situation made him very vigilant. This was the calm before the storm, indicating that once his pure yang energy erupted, it would be even more dangerous than before. Control? That's only temporary. Your pure yang energy will completely erupt. What will you do then? I'll deal with whatever comes my way. What are you worried about? No, I can't let you go to the dragon domain no matter what. If you want to leave, then you'll have to step over my body. Yi Dingdong's face was red as she directly wanted to lie down on the ground. Tang Zheng's eyes were sharp as he quickly pulled her back. He let out a long sigh and said, "Why are you doing this?" Yi Dingdong's expression was firm as she said, "If you don't cherish your life, then why should I?" Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Normally, Yi Dingdang wouldn't be so unreasonable. It seemed like the others were even more determined today, not giving him any face at all. The Empyrean fairy looked at this scene and couldn't help but feel a trace of emotion. These women's feelings for Tang Zheng were unquestionable, but they were still willing to leave him in order to save him. This kind of perseverance and affection was extremely heavy, causing her to be moved. Her original resentment and emotions disappeared like smoke in thin air. It was precisely because Tang Zheng understood their feelings that he couldn't refuse their good intentions. Both sides were in a deadlock. You could go to the dragon domain. Suddenly, Wu Junshan and Yin Qingyi walked in, and Lan Yu said something shocking. "What?" Everyone wondered if they had misheard and looked at Lan Yu, who was walking over in disbelief. Marshall couldn't help but say, "Mistress, are you mistaken?" Lan Yu smiled faintly and said meaningfully, "How could I be wrong? Little, you want to go to the dragon domain?" Tang Zheng nodded his head. "You have your own opinions. This is a well-known fact. We are your strong backing. How can we drag you down?" Lan Yu said with a smile. Tang Dahai also walked in and said, "You're right. We're your family. We won't drag you down. We'll only be your backing so that you won't have to worry about anything." "Grandfather, why are you here?" Tang Zheng hurriedly went up to greet him. His attitude towards Tang Dahai was even more cordial. Lan Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness, but she immediately put away her complicated feelings. After all, she was the one who personally invited Tang Dahai. Last night, the couple had no choice but to ask Tang Dahai for help. After all, Tang Dahai understood Tang Zheng the best, and the relationship between grandfather and grandson was the closest. Tang Dahai indeed understood Tang Zheng very well. After giving the two of them some pointers, it was as if they had seen the blue sky after dispersing the clouds and mist. Tang Zheng's character was amenable to coaxing but not coercion, and could only go along with his temperament. If he had already made his decision, even 8 horses wouldn't be able to pull him back. Then he might as well go with the flow. This way, he would be able to obtain an unexpected effect. Thus, when they heard that Tang Zheng was going to the dragon domain, Wu Junshan and Lan Yu had a tacit understanding and decided to go with the flow and agree with his decision. Tang Dahai's spirit was hale and hearty as he said, "This trip to the dragon domain will definitely be dangerous. After all, you're not facing one enemy, but many dragon slayers. So, you can't return alone. With so many people, you have to choose a helper. The dragon domain is also a place of trouble. There are dragons there. If they are not of the same mind as you, it will be troublesome at the critical moment." Lan Yu's mouth curled up in joy. The old man had the same thoughts as them. Thus, she hurriedly agreed. The old man's words are reasonable. "Little Zheng, you have to choose someone to fight with you side by side." Tang Zheng muttered to himself. It seemed that these words were not without reason, and he could not find a reason to refute them. "Of course my daughter is the most suitable candidate." Suddenly, the Emperor of Heaven walked over and said with a loud voice. The others were startled, especially the Empyrean fairy. She looked at her father in astonishment and asked, "Father, this is his business. How does it have anything to do with me?" The Emperor of Heaven waved his hand and said proudly, "Now that we are all in the same camp, how can we be divided? We should help each other. Only then can we fight against a strong enemy. Now, among so many people other than you, who is the most suitable to go together?" If it was before, the fearless Yi Ding Dang would definitely object, but at this moment, she was actually silent for the first time. Her eyes flashed with a pondering expression, and then she came to a sudden realization. His other close female friends also heard the implied meaning. These elders echoed each other. It was clear that everything was clear. They were deliberately matchmaking the Empyrean fairy and Tang Zheng together. The trip to the dragon domain was definitely dangerous. What if the two of them were to see their true feelings in adversity? This was more effective than forcefully matchmaking. After all, these two were not ordinary people, and forcefully matchmaking might not work. Yes, we also agree. The Empyrean fairy and Tang Zheng will go together to the dragon domain. They can look after each other, and even if there is danger, they can deal with it. Fang Shishir was the first to speak and stood on the same side as the elders. As soon as this was said, the others also echoed and expressed their agreement. Tang Zheng and Empyrean fairy looked at each other and couldn't help but be a bit stunned. It seemed that the others had already finished speaking and didn't give them a chance to think or object. The two of them weren't idiots. How could they not see that everyone was trying to matchmake them together? Thinking back to last night's matter, the two of them instantly understood. This was taking a step back and using a roundabout way to save the country. This circle was really big. Tang Zheng was about to refute, but Lan Yu was sensitive and immediately guessed his thoughts. She didn't give him a chance to speak and impatiently said, "This matter is decided. The two of them will go together." Emperor of Heaven hurriedly echoed and said, "That's reasonable. This trip to the dragon domain is dangerous and unpredictable. You must help each other. No matter who is in danger, the other should do everything they can. Even if there's a bit of sacrifice, you must consider the overall situation and save the other party. Do you understand?" After Emperor of Heaven finished speaking, he gave the Empyrean fairy a meaningful look. The Empyrean fairy didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How could she not understand the meaning behind these words? This was telling her to risk her life to save Tang Zheng when his pure yang energy erupted. She couldn't help but wonder if the Emperor of Heaven was her biological father. Instead, she was closer to Tang Zheng. "Yesterday was my birthday, and there were guests at home. There were many things to do, so I didn't update. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.